Hi there, and welcome to the Sorry I Like This podcast. I'm joined with my fellow co-host Ezra, and my name is Caleb. Ezra, how are you feeling today?
I'm feeling really good, Caleb. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. It's getting to the year end. You know,
The
it's
holidays have
that
descended upon us.
it's been a wonderful year, and pretty much like we got a fun show today
Yeah.
that I'm looking forward to. Maybe some little hot takes that come in. But you know, we are post game awards, and honestly, it is really exciting to talk about it. There was a we kind of thought about for a while, like how and what we were going to do with the game awards, and I think we kind of settled. Like, I really like the way we settled. Gave it a few days to
Yeah.
really like store in our thoughts, and rather than just giving a fresh reaction. Um, and I'll get a little bit more into detail as to why that it is a little later.
Yeah.
But I'm glad we sat on it, and I think we have some that will be the bulk of this episode. But we're gonna kind of do a little topsy turvy today, to be honest
Yeah.
with you. We know that that's going to be the bulk of the show, and we kind of know that this is a honestly, this is the one of the biggest moments of the year as far as gaming goes. So it's like we have to give the spotlight it deserves, right?
For
So
good or bad, really.
for good or bad, exactly. And just being completely transparent, that's what this episode is 90% about.
Yeah.
But we have a few titles that we've been sitting on that we've been wanting to talk about,
Yeah.
and we're gonna actually. This is where I was saying like things are topsy turvy. We're actually gonna do a review portion in the beginning of the show, just so we can get it out of the way, get our thoughts on it, and then we'll move into uh, the game awards. And what we necessarily have to review are not necessarily big meaty games that we're going to talk about. It's just stuff
Yeah.
that we've been wanting to talk about that you know aren't we already kind of know that it's not like the biggest thing to put into a spotlight. So it's like
Yeah.
it's a good way to kind of start us off. So um
Exactly.
and so yeah, I guess was kind of dive into that first game. Um and this game is I've teased on the podcast. I
Several
talked about
times.
this in the I talked about this a random almost a random news topic that I talked for a while on, that I was really excited for this
Yeah.
game, and I told you all then that there's going to come a day where I'm going to be playing this game, and it's just going to be at a random time, and it's going to pop up at a random podcast.
Yes.
So I feel like this is really appropriate right now.
Well, and
So
there's also a fun fact about this game. A first for the podcast, even.
uh huh,
This is the first game that the two of us actually have played together in some capacity that we're talking about
exactly.
on the podcast. So,
Yep.
yeah.
That's true. You know what? That is true. We've always now. Granted, we've played games in the same room, but well, I guess
Yeah.
Smash Bros counts. But
I guess well,
um,
but we've never on this podcast especially,
yeah, exactly.
we've never like had the opportunity to play a game together and then come back, right? Like
Right.
FF7 single player game, uh
Exactly.
Shadow Generations, right? Like we
Hmm.
didn't have that opportunity. So, yeah, it's kind of cool that we have this opportunity, but they don't know what the game is yet. So.
Exactly, which is wild to think about, considering
Yeah.
what the game is, right?
Yes, that is also kind of a crazy piece. So yeah.
It's not like our most normal genre of games that we play, and it felt like a tangent then when we did that news coverage,
Yeah.
and it's going to be a small tangent now.
Yeah, yeah. This is definitely like this like the already small audience for this podcast is going to shrink a little bit the moment you say the name of this game. Like just being honest, like that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about football. That's right.
Yep.
We're going to be talking about sports ball right now.
Yeah, exactly.
uh, EA College Football 25. Now I know what you're saying. There's a football game that comes out every year. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. But not college football. Okay, it's been a good
While.
11 years
Yeah.
since the last college football game that's released. And when they announced this game, I don't know, 4 years ago, I
Yeah.
think, there was a lot of logistics being involved. Because the reason, kind of giving a little bit of backstory that I went into on that news topic, it's like they stopped doing it because obviously, um, whether it was directly or indirectly, they were kind of using players' likeness when college football would not, the NCAA would not allow them to get compensated for it because they're in school. So a lot
Yeah.
of it was being profitized towards that, kind of led to the downfall of college football in gaming. Um, and honestly, I think everybody thought it was dead, to be honest with you. And then things started changing. The NIL started happening, where players are now able to get compensated
Yeah.
um, for using likeness and
It's like finally,
uh,
right?
right,
Like,
exactly, yeah. And
yeah.
there's there's been a lot of pros to it and a lot of cons to it,
Yeah.
surprisingly. Um, which I kind of won't go into as far as what the cons of it, as far as what it means as college football as a whole, because that's a whole other tangent about salary caps and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But the pros being we get college football back as far as game video games go. And so I had to try it out. I wanted to play a college football game in this modern era. As much has changed since the last college football game
Yeah.
came out. There's playoffs now. There's even, you know what I mean? There's
Hmm.
even extended playoffs now. So it's just kind of like, you know, I think there's more love for other conferences now too for fans um, in this new age, and I think that it's just interesting. Um, like that's why I wanted to play it so far. It's like that interesting um, dynamic, well, not necessarily dynamic, but
Well, it sounds a little bit like it's you know uh taking like an old, like when they made Top Gun Maverick, right? And you take
mhm,
like an old franchise and bring it forward into a new thing when
exactly.
there hasn't it's not like it's not like a franchise that's been going on for 20 years where
Mhm.
that's that like incremental evolution. It's like no, you take like something from 2011 and it goes right into 2024. How does that
Exactly.
translate? And I think, yeah, I mean, uh, as as somebody who doesn't pay attention to football. It's been a very long time since I had played Madden. I can tell you like, oh, I thought the game was like competently made. I thought the mechanics were there,
Hmm.
right? Like I can tell you like, oh, I had a good time playing it, but as somebody who doesn't play a lot of sports games, who doesn't pay attention to sports really at all, I'm more
Hmm.
interested to hear like what you think about it and what your kind of takeaway was, not just
Yeah,
from playing with me, but from however much time you've managed to spend on it.
that's an excellent question. How much time have I spent on it? 21 hours.
Oh wow, okay,
So that for a sports game, that's not bad. That's
yeah,
not bad at all. Um, so yeah, I've you know, you're never going to hear me cover Madden on the podcast. Honestly, you might not even hear me cover college football again on the podcast. This might be a first and only type of review because I do think they are going to yearly releases. But you know, I will say first impressions like of the game. My first impressions was okay. I can see where they've learned from Madden over the years and really trying to apply a lot of what works over at Madden into college football compared to what it used to be.
yeah,
Um, and a lot of that goes into core gameplay mechanics too. Um, Passing is so much more difficult
yeah. No,
than
it
the
was
way it
hard.
used to be.
Yeah, no,
Um,
we just for a little bit of context, when I played it, it was a group of like four of us,
uh-huh.
and everyone but me had already had a few drinks at that point, and so it was constantly like, especially the two other people who hadn't played it before, it was
Uh-huh.
constantly like how do you pass, like how no, you did it wrong, you're supposed to do it like this, like it
Yeah, you're
is
supposed
like
to.
actually difficult. Yeah,
Yeah, it's all like the timing of holding down the button versus making sure taking into account like the timing it would be to pass that ball. The immersion of it has kind of gotten a lot more complicated, and you know it it's difficult. I'm not going to lie and say that I have mastered it because 21 hours in, I have not mastered it. I most recent game I played, I threw for 5 interceptions. So I mean, I'm
wow,
still not getting it down.
yeah,
Um, but that's not to say it's a bad thing, right? I think one of the main things is I'm too stubborn to lower the difficulty down to recruit over varsity. Um, which varsity's like medium for context, and recruit's easy. So it's like I want to be at a normal difficulty, but maybe because it's been so long since I've played um, a college football game slash really Madden as well. Like it's been a good. I got a recent Madden like 2 years ago, and then but really it's been since 2017 since the last Madden I played, and
yeah,
so that's about 7 years of like refining a game that releases yearly. You know, um, so it's a learning curve, but I gotta say, at the same time, it is so cool the way they have. It's like it's a literal love letter to college football at the same time. Like the way they um just I guess the way they I don't know ported might not be the right word, but the way they designed the stadiums and the the immersion of, like, graphically it's not like the greatest, it's not like the greatest graphics you're ever going to see, but at the same time there's still so enough detail there that, like, it feels a lot more different than what a Madden game is. And I guess the real thing
Sure.
would be the reason why Madden doesn't get that type of magic, that flair, um, would be probably because, I mean, it's the NFL. And
Yeah.
as much as I love the NFL, I actually prefer the NFL the most. 90% of the stadiums are all indoor stadiums. All dome stadiums that are kind of almost all looking the same. And they don't have that, like, they don't have bands, they don't have, like, a lot of the spirit, like, yeah, like school spirit that, you know college has, and that translates into the game. I think that's a real cool subtlety the game has, and um it's just been a lot of fun, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
um as much as I'm doing terrible at it, i I'm loving it. I can't stop playing it. I've dove into the career mode now, and this is where I'm talking about, like, how this is what I wanted to see as far as, like, how college football has changed over the years, and playing out a career mode, and it's like really complicated. You got to make sure that your GPA is up, that you're still, like, um like, there's like a mechanic where you have to focus on your brand itself, because as a college student, and again, this is kind of more towards the cons of the NIL, is the fact that you have to represent yourself. You have to justify your salary, essentially. And I think that's a really cool mechanic they have in there as far as the game goes. Um, they start you off in your freshman year. They give you, I mean, you can go all 4 years in this career mode. I'm in my sophomore year, so as far as
Yeah.
that goes, and it's really good immersion. And the only thing I'll say is, you think the passing is hard on just normal when we were playing Ezra?
Yeah.
When you're in career mode and you choose your player to be quarterback,
Yeah.
there's another, um, not necessarily an option, but what happens is when you play as quarterback, the camera's different. So essentially, you're playing third person from a quarterback point of view.
Wow. Okay.
So it's so much more, like, your field of view is so much more limited in vision
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to pass the ball, which is why I
That's
threw for
so
five
weird.
interceptions.
Yeah.
It is so weird. But you would think, if the camera was in that certain point of view, you think it would go first person, not third person, because then you
Yeah.
have a whole body blocking you, and it's yourself, right?
Uh-huh.
It's like, I want to see my receivers down the field. I'm just kind of throwing it up in the air and hoping for the best as far
Yeah,
as deep ball
yeah.
goes.
Yeah, you're
And
yeah, that's huh. Yeah. Cuz
and
even
it's
yeah,
like,
even if it was first person, you would still be able to see like what the player sees, right? So,
exactly
yeah.
right. And you know, it's like, I was like, okay, all right, well, I guess I could get used to it if I practice enough with it. But the practice that you have in your career, those practice drills and all that stuff,
Yeah.
guess what? They're all in that top-down view and not in that
Yeah.
quarterback perspective.
You can't force a quarterback perspective at all.
No, nope.
Wow. Huh.
I've tried so far, and I haven't been able to find it. So
Man.
there's some minor, like not necessarily minor complaints, but like there's some complaints about the I have of this game. But overall, it's fun. It's fun enough for me to enjoy, and I can see myself playing this for quite a while. To be honest with you, I've been loving it. I've been playing pretty much what I like to do is I like to play I'll play. So Ohio State's my favorite team, so I will play whoever Ohio
Yeah.
State's facing that week. Um, as far as the regular season goes, and now we're into playoffs, and pretty much after that, I'll probably stop. But I can see myself going back to this game next year. My only worry is that after 3 years, this game doesn't become obsolete. As long
Oh, sure.
as far as what I'm meaning is more like it's no longer supported. Um,
Like you can't play it because the
right,
offline is
exactly.
yeah.
Which I know with some Madden games that happened. Even if you were playing offline, um, I think they stopped doing that. But at the same time, I hope that doesn't happen. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I would score it probably for a sports game, probably a B,
Okay.
an 8. You know,
Yeah.
it's 8 out of 10. Um,
Yeah.
for a sports game, it's not like a groundbreaking story based game 8. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. No,
um,
I hear what you're saying. Yeah.
it's not like my normal scaling. I guess that's the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Um, uh, I guess what were your thoughts in the brief time that you got to play it?
Yeah, I mean, disclaimer, I only played the multiplayer, so I don't have a lot of thoughts on like the rest of it. Um I will say I do remember, like you were talking about being a little impressed by the presentation and like
Mm-hmm.
the way that they kind of weaved in a lot of like the college spirit stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that's like if college football is anything, it is like a something for your college to rally around, right? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
um, kind of the point. Like the college is seen as representing the city or the state or whatever, and then and so in that way, I think it was important that they got that right, and I think they largely did. Again, in the very brief time I got to play it. And then, another disclaimer, the way we were playing it was we set it up with a
Yeah.
projector, which is going to add some input lag.
Mm-hmm.
Not enough to like ruin the experience, but it does make some things harder. And when it's like your first time playing a game and you know, contrary to I think a lot of like the core gaming audience, sports games are actually generally speaking more complex than they first appear. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and especially football. Like football is already uh, kind of weirdly complicated sport, right?
Yeah,
Like
it's very complex. Yeah.
you don't you know, if you're just watching it for the first time and you don't know what's going on, you look at it and it just looks like people just bumping into each other for 2 hours.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
in fairness, that is kind of what it is, but there's a lot more that goes into it, and so like college football the job that game has to do is replicate that complexity and the real time, like moment to moment action of the sport. And I think, insofar as like the uh do I feel similarly while I'm playing college football to when I'm at a football game? I think, aside from, being in the stadium and, everyone's around you, I do think those feelings are similar, right? Like I think they do a good
Hmm.
job of like replicating the experience of like, you know, watching football and seeing like the player do this epic hero moment, right? Like
Hmm.
those kinds of things really do translate quite nicely um, in the way that they've kind of set up college football. Um, I will say, I think this is going to sound like a weird criticism, but um, I do think the fact that uh, what's the best way to say this? I think the fact that like it is quote unquote like just football, um like part of the reason I don't think I would play it over even
Hmm.
over something like a like an NBA 2K or FIFA or something like that. um it is the fact that like uh generally speaking, football is one of the most like stop and go sports, right? Like and like most sports games, because it's about like it's usually like who has the ball, go to who has the ball, you control who
Hmm.
has the ball. I think like
Hmm.
I would be more like inclined to play a game that doesn't have um as much time between plays, right? Because like in football, a play could start and end inside of 5 seconds, right? Like that's a very
Hmm.
possible thing. That doesn't usually happen in um, most other
Yeah.
contact sports, right? Like I think baseball is kind of the only one, and obviously edge cases and basketball and soccer and stuff, um, but all that's to say, I think that like because sports games are every sport is kind of a variation on throw the ball around and get the ball to a certain spot, right? Like that's just kind of how it is. Because the way that that's implemented into each different sports franchise is so
Hmm.
similar, right? Like the passing mechanics in college football actually are kind of the only time I feel like I've seen like a quote unquote innovation in that space.
Hmm.
Um, but because football is so stop and go, I'd be more like, if I were going to play a sports game, I think I'd be more inclined to play like an NBA or soccer or something like that. But
Hmm.
um, but I think that's mostly like a problem. I think that's also kind of a problem that most sports games fans wouldn't necessarily care about. Um, but I think just to me, it's like, oh, uh, I think, ultimately the problem is like, where's Mario, right? Like that's that, you know what I mean? Like that's kind of um the problem for me is like having grown up with like the Mario sports games as kind of
Hmm.
a um as the like, oh, like I'd love to play like Mario Strikers or whatever, like
Hmm.
that's um or even like the NBA Street games where Mario, I think it was like Mario and Luigi and maybe Toad or somebody were in those games. Like, um, but anyways, college football, good presentation, interesting mechanics, if a bit similar to all the
Hmm.
other Madden games I've played, um, and also, um, I do think it's just like cool. I think it is cool that they're doing it again. Um, yeah,
Yeah, it really is cool to see that they're doing it again. I'm really excited to see this new generation of games um, for college football. It's like I know I
yeah,
won't get the next. For me, I have a 3-year rule when it comes to sports games, at least, because really, there's no. If you get like, there was a time period of time where I was getting it yearly for like 4 years, 5 years, or something.
yeah,
And what I noticed in that time of me getting in yearly releases is that there wasn't many improvements to the game in between each year. It's really a span of about 3 to 4 years, which is a normal. It's a normal game timeline as far as like
yeah,
what game development usually is. So it is kind of like an interesting thought to think about. Um, and so I doubt any change is going to happen within the next 3 years. If anything, I think the next game will be more refinements of what this game is, just kind of polishing
yeah,
what works and what doesn't, and that would be my imagining of college football 26. But yeah, I mean, it's worth the try if you like sports games. If you like football and college football,
yeah,
I'm surprised you haven't played it already. It's worth the
yeah.
buy. It's,
If
it's
you're
worth the buy
listening,
in that regard.
if you're listening to this podcast, uh, like I said, there's a very good chance you're not interested, and if you are
Hmm.
interested, you have already bought it, right? Like
Right.
I think there's like maybe one person listening to this podcast in that camp that like, I listen to this podcast and I am now convinced to go buy college football. There's like one
Hmm.
person who would listen to this podcast and say that. But for that one person, hey, that's a pretty glowing recommendation. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So moving on, kind of into our next main main game. This one I did not play, but
Yes.
Ezra, you have a game that you would like to kind of discuss. And
Yeah,
to my
just
understanding, did you do another review for this one?
yes, I did
Is that correct? Okay.
yeah, I did this was a review for Fairy Tale 2 that I did for RP Gamer. Uh full disclosure, I did receive my copy of the game for free, so everything I say, uh, take it with a grain of salt, I guess. But I'm not about. I say that I'm not exactly going to glaze it. Let's say. I have some thoughts. Um, so if you have been in anime spaces for the past, I would say 10 years. I would say 10 years is probably a safe bet. Um, you've probably heard of Fairy Tale at some point, Caleb. I don't know if you have. I was
I
probably
might
watching
have.
it. There's a chance I might have like brought it up at some point with you because I used to watch it actually. I watched it. Um, I watched it until the anime went on a hiatus, and then like after it was out of hiatus, I kind of moved on. Um, but I got the chance to play this game, and I was like, oh, I didn't play the first Fairy Tale game, but I was like, oh, I have the chance to play this. Like, why not? Um, and uh, where to start? Again, this is a game I did for RP Gamer. I would much rather you go and read the review, so I'm not going to talk about everything in it here.
Mm-hmm.
But long story short, I don't think there is fundamentally a bad game in here, right? Like I think that there are the bones of a solid combat system. I think there is I think the presentation is charming. I think it has some good ideas, but I do think the execution does leave a lot to be desired, unfortunately. Um, so Fairy Tale 2 is a direct adaptation of the final arc of the Fairy Tale manga, the original manga. Um,
Okay.
so it kind of starts. I think it starts probably like uh when the anime went on hiatus. I think it starts like a little bit after that hiatus. So it's like it's not quite in between. And I'm not sure where the first game ends. Um, but yeah, so it's a direct adaptation of that. There are some like original story stuff that they do at the end, but those are presented more as like bonus chapters, not really like meaty story material. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those things where it's like uh back when I think it was like around like 2014 when the final battle of Naruto aired, and
Mm-hmm.
it was the final fight between or not aired. When it happened in the original manga and the manga ended, um, the anime was nowhere near that point, right? They were so far behind. I honestly would love to be a fly on the wall in that animation studio because I don't know what was going on. Um, but uh, in that time, Naruto Storm 4 came out, and I remember that being like it was kind of a big deal that was like the first time uh, that fight was going to be animated at all, right? Like it was the first
Mm-hmm.
time a medium was going to moving pictures medium was going to get the chance to portray that fight. And they did it spectacularly, I think. Naruto Storm 4 is a great game. Fairy Tail 2 is in a very different situation where the anime and the manga have both finished, right? They
Mm-hmm.
finished. I think the anime ended like 2 years ago, right? Like they're on a sequel series right now,
Right.
and the manga ended way before that. So this is not even close to being in that same situation. Um, and so a game like this has the burden of both being like a competent game and also justifying its own existence, right? Because it isn't the first it didn't like beat anything to the punch, right? Like the original story stuff is kind of a draw, but especially for people who aren't like locked into fairy tale, it's gonna be kind of a tough sell. And I do think that the adaptation leaves a lot to be desired, right? Like there is a staggering amount of stuff that I'm like positive is incredibly important, but also happens off screen, right? And like doesn't get explained uh, or like the characters just kind of wave it off and it's like, no, like you did something kind of crazy. Like, what do you mean this guy is locked between life and death? Like there's stuff like that that's just like, okay, like you need to tell us what's actually going on and not just wave it off, because fans will say like, oh yeah, like this and this happened, and it's like, that's, I'm sure it did happen in the anime and the manga, right? But that's not what I played. I played the game, and the game didn't
Right.
have that context. And then add on to that the fact that like most of the game looks good, but the animation quality really just isn't quite there for the most part. Um, and it kind of stops. It does kind of like, okay, like where's the reason for me to play this? Um, and then the combat is interesting because it's like both like a Final Fantasy ATB system and a like a combo management system of like a Tales game, right? Where like Tales games, especially Arise, I think was the game that did this kind of maybe at its most extreme. Tales games will have like, you do basic attacks and then that builds up a resource that you then spend on skills, and it's about like chaining skills together and stuff. So it's kind of the ATB systems combined with those resource systems. And it's an interesting combat system that suffers from just constant interruptions just all over the place, right? Like there's next to no like flow, to the point that it's like, I was playing it and I was like, I almost wish this was turn-based, because then at least
Oh wow.
because then at least it would be like, okay, like there's not this sense that like I'm just watching an animation and waiting to like get back into the part that I can determine. Like if I'm stuck watching an animation, I want it to be because like I chose that animation specifically because I needed that thing to happen, not because I just like arbitrarily met the conditions and then it triggered and I just have to watch it. Especially like, again, the animation quality isn't that good, so it's not like I'm watching these animations like my mind is blown, right? Like it's not like that. So it's just like, it's just kind of like, I wish, like, even if it was just a simple like, okay, press a button, skip animations, because you can skip a good portion of the animations, but there are enough that you can't skip that it's like, okay, like the pacing just kind of dies, right? Like it just kind of and then you just end up not really caring. Especially because the game is pretty easy, right? Like that's it's there are like hard fights in there, but it's generally speaking a pretty easy game. And then also, maybe more importantly than any of what I just said, uh, I had a lot more crashes than pretty
Hmm.
much any game I've ever played, especially like in the amount of time I spent on this
Ouch.
game. Like, it crashed. It crashed enough that I was like, okay, I saw the credits. I don't need to play anymore. Right? Like that was kind of the um,
Mm.
like I was going to do
Hmm.
like some of the side story stuff. I was like, oh yeah, I can like, because I didn't like hate it enough um to like stop, and it has kind of a satisfying loop of like discovering stuff and getting rewards and stuff. Like it's fun, and there are a lot of like playable characters, so there's some variety there. Um, but it got to that point where I was like, yeah, I just don't have the energy to do this when it's just gonna crash on me. Like, the autosave feature
Hmm.
is fine, but and it saves you from a lot of heartache, but it's just not like uh it's never fun to experience a crash, right? Like
No.
that's just never a fun time. And
Well,
yeah.
it's like, you remember my experience with a certain indie game called um
Oh, what was it
uh
called?
Jedi Survivor.
Oh, right. Yes, that one. Yeah. Yeah. You know what was funny about that was when I played it, I didn't experience that much
For me, it was
in the way of
constant.
crashes. Yeah.
It was so constant. It was so annoying. And of course, there is an autosave feature, but sometimes it's like it wasn't like perfect, and it's like, oh my god, I just got over this hurdle, and now I have to go do it again.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, especially like Jedi Survivor is not like the easiest game on the planet.
No.
So like, yeah. Tell that to
But
a
yeah,
Dark Souls fan though, and they'll rip your head off.
that's true. But that's just not. It's just not fun to experience,
Yeah.
especially when it's frequent. It's like
Yeah.
once or twice I can let it slide. When it's frequent,
Yeah.
ah,
When it's like
it's just
within
tough.
the hour of starting and it happens consistently enough, it's like, yeah, I give up. Like that was kind of my uh breaking point. So, you know,
Hmm.
that said, it has been a second since I played the game. I beat it before the official launch of the game, and I
Hmm.
played the PC version of the game. So, uh not to like give too many caveats to what I'm saying, but I am just saying, like, do your research. They might have fixed it. If you're
Right.
if you're a diehard fairy tale fan, right? Like,
Hmm.
and you're like, if you're like, I just want the chance to play as some of these characters, like, that's something I totally get and totally respect. And I think this does a serviceable enough job that I don't think it's fundamentally a bad game, but I do have a lot of issues with it. Um, but I will say it did like inspire me to be like, oh, I kind of want to like go back and rewatch Fairy Tale and sort of
Hmm.
uh, kind of like finish my journey with this franchise properly, right? Because I didn't uh, finish the series. I never like went back and finished the series
Right.
after it went on hiatus. So yeah, yeah. I mean, Caleb, you didn't play it. Do you have any like questions or anything like that for me about the game?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Other than uh, you'll have to send me your link because
Oh
the
yeah,
link to the article because I'd be interested in reading it always.
yeah,
So I think it's
yeah. No.
pretty cool that you get to do that. Um, Low-key kind of jealous, but at the same time, I probably don't have nearly as enough time to to preview a game before release unless you're throwing me a Final Fantasy game. In which case I will throw in all my PTO just to do it for you. So
Yes.
so Square, if you're listening, don't be afraid, don't be shy. Um but yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's about it
Yeah,
as far
no,
as my
yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, and again, I we'll have the link in the description of the
Mm.
podcast too, so you can go check out the review. And yeah, and I mean, my colleagues on RP Gamer are reviewing all sorts of stuff, so take a look at those.
Mhm.
And uh, yeah, a little bit of inside baseball stuff. This is not me giving away anything I shouldn't. Um, I'm hoping I haven't looked to see if this is
Mhm.
possible, but I'm hoping I will be able to get my hands on the review code that we get for Tales of Grace's F Remastered, because that was kind of my first. Uh, it was my first Tales game, and it was my first. It was kind of my first uh, JRPG after Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy, right? Like it was kind of my
Right. Yeah, it'd be pretty
expansion
huge.
into the genre. So I'm hoping I get that opportunity, but I'm no confirmations or anything like that. And uh, again, this is not me like giving away any inside information. Like I don't
Mhm.
even know for sure that they'll get a copy. I'm
Right.
reasonably like confident because they got Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So like
Oh, did
that's
they
a
really?
yeah, I think so. So I think oh man, maybe I'm wrong about that, but they got metaphor, right? Like so it's not it wouldn't be outside the realm of possibility. So yeah, all that's to say that's kind of what I'm hoping for, but we'll see. Um, yeah, but that's Fairy Tale 2, and yeah, uh, go read other reviews because I'm pretty sure actually most other places are gonna give it a better score than I did, but I could be wrong. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Anyways,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of our two smaller titles that we wanted to talk about, that we wanted to put in the spotlight, but not like in the main spotlight,
yeah,
which I think works perfectly for today's show, because basically we got a ton of news,
yep,
and it's a great time to reflect on the year. It's the end of the year, and
yeah.
thus the Game Awards is here. So, um, basically, we got all our news in one show, and you know, we got to witness what is considered the game of the year this year. Um, and there's a couple ways I kind of want to structure this conversation. But first,
Yeah,
I want to talk about something that I talked about on the last podcast that I went on a pretty deep tangent on.
yeah,
Um, and I want to refine a little bit. It's not me taking back what I said. It's more
yeah,
me refining of what that criteria should be rather
sure,
than what it is. And I want to talk about um see, this would have been a lot more heated if this did actually happen, but I want to talk about what should constitute as DLC being considered for uh game of the year.
yeah,
And it's something I got to think about. Like at first I was like, no, it shouldn't be. Absolutely not. But what I think a DLC should be considered for Game of the Year would be is if, and we kind of touched on it in the last conversation, but I really want to kind of like let home this subject. This part of the subject is like it should really, in my opinion, it should really be a DLC that's refined a game from be almost beyond repair into its grave. Let's just put it. That's what I
Sure.
think a DLC should be, as far as making it into award consideration. Something that's so that refines the game, that adds to the game.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I mean, the best example of that for me is Cyberpunk.
Yeah.
Like that game was at its grave, and yet over time it got better, and it got its DLC last year that really refined the game to honestly the potential. And I haven't played it, but considering the critical reception of that most recent DLC, I mean, it has lived up to the potential that it was initially promised. It took them like 5 or 6 years to get to that point, but in my
Yeah.
opinion, that is something to be more celebrated on rather than something that, oh, it was already nominated for Game of the Year. It's got a DLC. It's got to be nominated for Game of the Year again. That to me should not be in the consideration.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, um, I think Cyberpunk Phantom Liberty was also like the situation with that was like CD Projekt Red when Phantom Liberty released, it was at
Mm-hmm.
the end of, you know, patch after patch, so much work
Mm-hmm.
post launch of Cyberpunk, right? Like
Right.
they had done so much work, and then Phantom Liberty was like a cap off, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
they released that, and that was sort of like the end, like the stamp of like we're happy with Cyberpunk now. And so like it was kind of when it was
Mm-hmm.
part of the awards show, I think nobody really cared. Nobody was really bothered, at least because it felt like, okay, yeah, this is kind of deserved, right? It's kind of in the same way that like No Man's Sky, right? Like you kind of want to acknowledge the journey that that game has had.
Mm-hmm.
um so yeah, I think like I kind of agree. Like I really like Shadow of the Erd Tree. I've played way too much of it. um I think it does a lot right. I also think it does a lot wrong, but that's a different conversation. Um, but even I'm a little bit like, yeah, like Elden Ring won Game of the Year already. This isn't Elden Ring 2, right? That's actually one of the biggest problems with Shadow of the Erd Trees. It's not Elden Ring 2. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like in, I would go so far as to say that Shadow of the Erd Tree's existence as a DLC actively hampers its potential. But again, that's a different discussion. Um, so I think that like it is such a strange, like FromSoft has already become arguably they're kind of the new Naughty Dog, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the way that people treat them.
Yeah.
um and uh and I think that like there's a real frustration that I have, that's like this isn't even a brand new game from FromSoft,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like it's not even, because if like let's say, Final Fantasy VII remake came out, and then it didn't get not I don't remember what it got nominated for at the Game Awards that year, but let's say it like didn't get nominated for Game of the Year, but then Intergrade was like so awesome, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
was like just like the greatest thing ever. And like the argument, like, yeah, it's a brand new campaign and it was like a brand new release and everything, like
Right.
then I can see it, right?
Right.
But like Elden Ring is like, it you download the DLC and you can just like hop on your character that you played back when the game
Mm-hmm.
first launched, and you're ready to go, right? Like as long as you've met the conditions to, like, as long
Right.
as you've beaten the bosses you need to beat, you can get into the DLC just fine. um I think it's like the fact that like it's not brand new, it's not like a new
Mm-hmm.
campaign, right? Like, because I would say, like, I think Kingdom Hearts 3 Remind is like one of the most spectacular DLCs of all time. Even I would say, like, yeah, I don't think that should, I don't think in retrospect it should have been qualified for awards season, right?
Right.
Like even as much as I think like some of the stuff in Remind is the best the series has ever
Mm-hmm.
gotten, uh I still don't think it should have qualified, uh at least against the brand new games that year. I am all for a DLC specific category, or even like
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
subcategories, right? Like if you wanted to say like best uh best additional content score, best additional content art direction, right? Like if you wanted to like tack on stuff, like that sounds awesome too, because work went into
Mm-hmm.
that content, right? Like it'd be silly to not acknowledge the effort that has gone into some of the biggest releases of the year. But like
Mm-hmm.
it does feel like you are taking away from brand new releases when Shadow of the Erdtree ends up on the Game of the Year list, right? Like that does
Right.
feel a little bit like what's going on. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think you've really hit the point there. I mean, this was a slippery slope, and you know, it might not. Shadow of the Erdtree might not have won Game of the Year this year, but I think it is going to have lasting repercussions as
yeah,
far as the Game Awards goes. And I kind of wanted to start that off as kind of to really just refine that point that I made the other day. Um, but yeah, I mean, let's just kind of transition to it.
yeah,
As far as the um, what won and what didn't win.
yeah. I have the awards pulled up.
I
I don't
do
know if.
too.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah,
Um, I mean, we could kind of rapid fire through a lot of these.
yeah,
Um, kind of, it was an awful. Let's just put it this way: it was an awful night as far as my game of the year winners. I
yeah,
definitely got an F as far as my percentage of being right. Honestly, I would go along as far as to say that I probably only got like a 15% or something along
yeah.
that
That's
lines.
probably true. Yeah, I
I
don't.
did
Yeah,
not win much.
yeah,
Like as far as stuff that I chose.
yeah. I don't remember exactly what we chose and what we didn't choose, but yeah, I think uh generally speaking, um we did not do very well, in terms of like predicting what was going on. Like
Hmm.
uh we definitely didn't see, uh oh, what's her name, Melina Huergens for Senua's Saga. Like
Oh,
we
yeah.
like neither of us saw that coming. Like, um, I don't know what. I think we probably said Brianna White actually, which
Yeah.
was maybe just like being naive.
Maybe slight biased, but
Yeah,
at the same time, there was a stacked um that was a stacked category,
yeah.
you
I
know.
actually think the snub in best performance actually is Hannah Tell shouldn't have gotten the nomination for Life is Strange. The guy who plays the
Mm,
main villain in Metaphor should have gotten her spot, or Humberly Gonzalez in Star Wars Outlaws. Like one of those two should have gotten
mhm.
replaced by the guy who plays the main villain because that guy did like awesome. Like that was legitimately an awesome performance.
Hmm.
Anyways, um, yeah, all that's to say.
So, I mean, well, you kind of I mean, that was the first award of the night. And should have been a sign, to be honest with you, but I was like, I'll look past it. I was still upset. I felt bad. Like,
Yeah.
it, I guess I just was not predicting that at all. And so I'm just kind of gonna. I don't know which source you're on, but I'm looking at Deadline right now,
Oh, okay.
and they have the list, and uh, so they um, I'm gonna skip all the esports stuff, um, and content creator. Uh, Most anticipated game was to no one's surprise Grand Theft Auto 6. Um, I mean, Grand Theft Auto 5 was a generational game, uh, multi-generational game. I don't think to say that this game is not everybody's most anticipated game would be blasphemy. I
Yeah.
guess that's the best way to put it. It's like
Yeah.
there was no way
Yeah. Yeah.
there was no way it was not going to win.
Yeah. That one. It's like. Yeah. It's one of those like everything gets out of the way for GTA, right? Like,
Hmm.
um, even if you have your misgivings, right? Even if you're like, I'm not sure yet, you're like, yeah, it's GTA.
To to put it simply, this is like Star Wars Episode 7 to the video game industry.
Yes. Yes.
Um, Whether or not you like have that same level of hype, that's a little different. I mean, I don't have that same level of hype, but to be as far as like a cultural phenomenon,
Yeah.
that's what that's comparable to. Um, I mean, it's going to be as far as the gaming industry. The moment they get a release date on Grand Theft Auto 6, any game that was planned for release that month getting delayed, 100%. They'll
Yeah.
come up with some excuse.
Unless it was like a something like that's so drastically different from
Hmm.
GTA that like the audiences just aren't the same. Yeah. GTA is dominating. uh yeah, Pokemon will release next to GTA, right? Like that'll happen.
Hmm.
But if you're not Pokemon, you're not releasing next to GTA. That's
No,
suicide.
no, exactly. So I mean that's to no one's surprise. Best adaptation. This one was a little bit of an enigma for both of us. We weren't sure who was going to win. I did say Fallout, and they were the ones that end up winning to that. But I guess it was a tougher year than I thought. You know, I don't think it was the same caliber as what last year was for his best adaptation. Um, where you had The Last of Us, you had Super Mario Bros.
Yeah.
Like
Was last year the first season of Arcane too?
it could have been, could have
No, no,
been.
no, 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 no. Last year, Yeah, I think it was 2022 that was like Arcane and Cyberpunk Edge Runners were both in the
Hmm.
same year. Um, yeah. Speaking of Arcane, I this is maybe the only time we'll have the chance. They had a freaking awesome performance with
Oh
21
yeah,
Pilots for Arcane. And that was
that was really good.
yeah, it was awesome. Jeff Keighley looked like he was
It's
crying afterwards.
for me, um, the Game Awards performance that was we've been spoiled the past 3 years, but
Yeah.
the best Game Awards performance for me was Blood Upon the Snow by Hosier for God of War Ragnarok.
Oh, sure.
That one was the best one,
Yeah.
and like a really really great performance. But next to that, this has got to be in the top two for sure as far as performances
Yeah.
go. Like, you know, the
Yeah.
see, you would think that me being the fan I am, I would have Final Fantasy VII in that contention from last year's performance, and that was great and everything. And
Yeah.
I do really love the theme song, but at the same time, I when that came on, I did my best to ignore it
Yeah.
because for me, I want to experience it in the game itself. And they were also having a trailer in the background that
Yeah.
was, I think, the final trailer, right?
It
So
might have been.
I was at that point, I've learned with Square Enix games that the closer you get to the release, best not to watch any trailers. So,
Yeah.
um, I was at that point I was on full on blackout. I can't watch it right now. Um, but I listened to it and it was great. But the that was a it was just an incredible performance by 21 Pilots. Like
Yeah.
I've watched it a couple times now. It was a really good one, and that's partly because I haven't watched the show, but I think the tone of the like this was the final season, and you could feel the tone that it sets itself. It
Yeah.
was a really great performance.
Yeah.
Um,
One, I think it was
I
one
don't
of
know.
those. I would say Game Awards performances. I think I remember a few years ago when Green Day performed,
Mm,
right? And I just remember watching and feeling like, man, what am I supposed to like enjoy about this, right?
hmm
Like, not because Green Day's bad, far from it, but because they weren't attached to a game, right? Like they it wasn't attached to something that I care about.
exactly.
And Snoop Dogg performed later in the night, and I think there's an element there that like he's Snoop Dogg, right? Like that's
hmm
he uh even just the chance to see him up on stage for just a couple songs, right,
hmm
is enough. And he's in Fortnite now, so like there's a loose connection there. um I
Right.
also
Exact.
so I think that like um there's a balance there where like you want to at least have some like tangible connection to the topic at hand, right? um and insofar as that's the case, I think like last year, No Promises to Keep was fun, but also the song
hmm
that they did from Alan Wake 2, where like they got the actors, they got the performers, and they did like the whole like dance routine and stuff. Like that was really cool too. Um, So yeah, I do think it is a hard balance, but I do think this was like easily one of the best performances they've had, just from like a quality standpoint, right? Like just from like a like that was this was a really cool performance thing. Yeah, I think it was awesome. So yeah. Anyways, Arcane, I need to watch it because apparently the soundtrack goes hard.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, yeah, I've heard great things about the soundtrack too, and I mean, just judging from, I mean, that's a vocal performance, but just judging from it, it, it it's got a really good tone, and
Yeah.
honestly, it kind of sold me to watch it. You know, I kind of
Yeah.
really had little desire to watch it, and you know, um, I think I'm kind of actually convinced. One of these days, I'm actually like, there's a couple things that I need to watch before I get to that I'm really behind on. Um, for instance, I really want to watch that Secret Level show before I
Oh,
get to
sure.
that.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it's definitely now on the radar.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
um,
Yeah.
hold on 1 second. Okay. Um, so yeah, I mean, so that's the the like as far as okay, there we go. Sorry, my screen was frozen. um, uh, as far as best adaptation goes, I mean, we're getting into a really great era as far as adaptations are,
Oh, yeah.
and
We'll have more to talk
you
about at
know,
the end of the show, too.
exactly. And so I think that's really important to kind of examine, and this category is always going to get more and more interesting as the years go on.
Yeah.
And Fallout, I'll give them credit. Like I heard pretty good things about the show. I didn't hear overly great things about it, but to me, it wasn't much of a surprise that it did win.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I'm kind of excited for what they got in store for season two. I haven't watched it, but um, and I don't know if I ever will, but I am excited to kind of see how this train goes for them.
Yeah. Yeah. It was kind of weird that Todd Howard got on stage for that
Yeah,
award, but yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Best multiplayer game actually went to Helldivers 2.
Yeah. Which, fair
Uh,
enough.
yeah, fair enough. I'm happy about that. Um, best we'll glaze over best sports because really the best sports game should have been EA College Football 25. I'm just joking. Um, best sim strategy game Frostpunk 2. Frostpunk 2. Got any
uh,
thoughts on that?
Not really, other than I need to get back to Unicorn Overlord. Um,
Hmm.
but I don't know when that's gonna happen. I want to do it. I just don't have like a timeline because I've got like a bunch of stuff in the pipeline. So yeah.
um, best family game was Astrobot, the first of a few wins they got. But they did get the most important one. But I'll talk about that in a second. Best family game. I say pretty appropriate. I was not expecting it not to get this award.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
I say it all the time. Any game that is nominated for Game of the Year in a category where none of the other games are nominated for Game of the Year, that game's gonna win it, right? Like
mhm,
that's kind of just, to me. It's like they would be kind of stupid if that wasn't how it worked. You know what I mean? Like
mhm,
unless it's something like unless it's specifically like innovation and accessibility, which is like that has very specific criteria, then otherwise it's just like, yeah, then if it's nominated for Game of the Year, then it should just
mhm.
win that category. So
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I agree.
Also, it's a really good
Absolutely.
game. So
Yeah, I haven't played it, but I've been. That's definitely on the ones that I do want to play, and I've talked about that on before on the podcast. That it's definitely a priority for me, especially now. Um, okay, I'm just gonna say it. Best fighting game, well deserved. One, Tekken 8 won, and honestly, it wins just for the inclusion of Final Fantasy as its DLC. Yes, I'm a hypocrite for talking about DLCs being a factor into Game Awards, but hey,
we got
hats
Clive.
off to them. They got Clive. Um,
Literally everyone on the planet is kind of sad that it's not Tifa, but what can you do?
Me, it's like I'm hoping it's a situation that like because I know the whole Tifa argument, and honestly, it does kind of suck. It's not Tifa, but at the same time, what if it's the same situation as Sephiroth and Sora was um
Smash. Yeah.
to Smash? Yeah, I
Maybe.
mean it's
I mean,
possible. I mean it's still one
sure.
of the first fighters in that collection, so
That's
I
true.
think.
Let me look at Tekken 8's, because I haven't been following it. Let me look at Tekken 8's.
I think it's only got one fighter besides Clive.
Browse all. Come on. Okay, so Heihachi, Eddie, and
No.
Lydia. So three characters. Still, I don't know how much the character pass.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't know how much that, or how many characters it comes with, but
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I think yeah, Tekken 8 was kind of always gonna win.
Hmm. It
Really
was
the
a it
only
was a slow year.
Yeah, it was a slow year. Well, and it was the other games. It was all like Multiverses wasn't gonna win. Uh,
Hmm.
you could have like made an argument for Sparking Zero, but like there's no. And then like Grand Blue, like nobody played
Hmm.
it, so like there's no. Grand Blue's really good. I really like Grand Blue, but
Hmm.
it's not. It's not. Yeah, yeah. Anyways,
Yeah. Um. So this is the first of the things weren't going my way, but you were winning really big. If you
yeah.
were a Vegas betting man, Ezra, because uh, pulling out the upsets of the night was for best RPG Metaphor.
Metaphor. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well deserved. I honestly, I think like the only, I will say, I think there was a part of me that really was just glad that Elden Ring didn't win a lot
Hmm.
of these categories. Like, I
Right.
wasn't like necessarily always gunning for Metaphor to win some of these. Like, actually, like I really would have liked. I think like if best like action game had gone to Final Fantasy, right? Like that would have been
Right.
cool. But like, um but like I was both happy for Metaphor, but I was also happy Elden Ring didn't win. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, but yeah, Metaphor, really good RPG. Not much else to say about that. Yeah, really good game.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kind of moving on into other genre categories. Best action and adventure went to Astrobot.
yeah. They need to
Um,
just say best platformer,
yeah,
because then
yeah,
action and because for one thing, action adventure already kind of a stupid thing because action game is already a thing.
right.
So
Yep.
we need best platformer, best
Mm-hmm.
adventure, best action, right? Like
Yeah.
and we can just separate them. Zelda can be in best
Mm-hmm.
adventure. Uh, Mario can be in best platformer,
Right.
and I don't know, like, and Kingdom Hearts can be in best action, right? Like that's
Right.
that's kind of the
Exactly.
delineation there. Um, and games that fit multiple categories can end up in different ones, but like
Mm-hmm.
nobody's gonna say that Zelda, like Tears of the Kingdom, isn't a particularly good action game, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there is action, but there it's not like,
Right. But it's not so focused on action.
yeah, it's not an action game. So yeah, I think, yeah, just like with the whole thing with DLC, where I would welcome more categories. I think we need I think we do
Mm-hmm.
need new categories for these genres, because calling Astrobot an action adventure game is kind of
That's a
silly.
stretch.
Yeah, yeah.
But hey, they
It,
gave him the nomination and the win.
yeah,
So, I mean, I think they were kind of just trying to justify the game of the year portion, but
that was probably part of it.
yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, yeah, good for Astrobot. Happy for them. Um, and then best action game was Black Myth Wukong.
Yeah,
And
I,
if they're
I
gonna go ahead.
sorry, I was just gonna mention. I think Jeff Keighley said that this was China's first game award, actually. So, which, no, that's not true. No, it was China's first time up on stage at the
Hmm.
Game Awards, right? Because you know, I think like Honkai Star Rail and Genshin Impact, those have won Game Awards in the past, and those are that's a Chinese company. But uh, yes. Anyways, say what you were gonna say. I just wanted to add
Yeah,
that
I
little
I mean,
tidbit.
to me, if this was gonna win any category, I guess I'm happy with Black Myth Wukong getting that category.
Yeah.
It's not to say that like it doesn't deserve any wins or any of that. I haven't played it that much, and I don't really know much about that game, to be honest with you, to make a
Yeah.
certain judgment. I know of its caliber, and it winning one category, I think is well deserved. Um,
Yeah.
so I mean, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess there's not really much to say about Black Myth Wukong, besides that. So,
Yeah. The only other thing I would say is like I think uh, I do kind of feel like Black Myth Wukong was a little bit only up there because of the um the popularity of that game.
mhm, right.
Um,
It had a movement.
yeah,
Like it had like a strong cult following. So, I mean,
which is fair. Like
yeah.
I think that's like good almost. Like I I have some misgivings about the developer just because I've heard some stuff about them, but like
Mhm.
other than that, like I don't really care. I just think I do just think that there's like a it's kind of weird that The Last of Us Part 2 won Game of the Year in 2020, and then in 2024 Black Myth Wukong gets nominated for Game of the Year, right? Like that is kind of weird, but yes. Anyways, like I do think I think there was an argument for like Animal Well or something, right? Like something a little bit more kind of, or even Dragon's Dogma 2 or Unicorn Overlord or
there was a lot of there was a lot of big games that were still in contention for Game of the Year that didn't even get nominated.
Yeah.
But
anyways.
But yeah. So kind of moving on from Best Action in the genre categories, you got Best VR Game, Batman Arkham Shadow, which I guess isn't a surprise, but it still kind of surprised me.
Sure.
Just because I just didn't think it's so tough to judge with VR games.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Just to say, like, neither of us have access to VR at the moment, so like we can't judge for ourselves on any of them.
But it's like, from what I've seen, it's still so primitive that like it's hard for me to even justify getting something VR. Like yeah, I just don't quite. It's not that I don't quite get it. It's just more of like I haven't found something that is going to consistently. Oh, okay. I need a VR set to actually play, type of thing.
Have you, out of curiosity, have you ever actually played VR? Have you gotten that chance at all?
I have one time.
Oh, okay.
It was fun. Yeah. But I remember how being so like primitive and like really like limited, just kind of clunky, and for me it's like I don't want that with a Batman game.
Which is fair. That's a fair thing to say.
If I want to be the Batman, I want to be the Batman, right?
Yeah.
So, I guess I just didn't see it winning that award. Even though Batman's hugely popular, so it's not surprising that it didn't win that game, like that award. Kind of moving on to.
I mean, this is kind of
the sweep.
Yeah. Yeah.
The sweep that the clean sweep that of the indie award portion of the awards, and a game that has made Ezra addicted to on his phone.
Yes. Not just my phone.
Probably PC too.
Yeah. Light admission, I was definitely still playing Balatro while we were setting up for this podcast.
Well, that's fair. I mean, I spent like 25 minutes trying to figure out my mic issues. So
no, like while we were trying to like figure those out, I was like clicking on Balatro to pass the time.
It was fun.
I
mean, I could totally understand why it won those 3 categories, which I'm just gonna say, it's the 2 independent categories and best mobile game categories. It kind of already was a easy win, but like it's just it's pretty easy. So I'm just kind of lumping them all into the same spotlight real quick.
So
really good for Balatro.
Yeah, I wanna add on one guy, right? Like one person made this game, so that's awesome. 2, nominated for Game of the Year as well, right? Like so
right.
It kind of beat out every other game in its respective categories, I think, just kind of by default. And then also when they got up to accept the award, the people from the publisher were like, yeah, neither of us are the developer because he doesn't like to be
Oh yeah, he
public.
doesn't want to. Yeah.
And it was so funny because it was like they clearly have like a pre-existing relationship with the developer, right? Like they have like a rapport with him. And you could tell that because they kept being like, dude, just like accept that you won the award, right? Like
Hmm.
just like, you know, just like take it and be happy and like
Right.
just like, you know, be accept the compliments. um it was quite wholesome. It was quite nice. But
Hmm.
it was like kind of funny, like, yeah, like this guy is like too humble, right? Like
Right.
he's too ready to be like, yeah, the other people deserve it more than me. Like, no, like, you know, take your success, please. Yeah, so I mean, I don't know what is in the future for Balatro or Local Thunk, the developer, but whatever it is, I mean,
Hmm.
best of luck because you obviously know what's happening. So
Yeah. Um. So going into the next category, and I don't think we need to touch too much on this.
yeah,
Is best community support went to Baldur's Gate 3, and
no surprises there.
yeah, pretty much no surprises there. There wasn't really that much this year as far as like honestly, this is almost kind of a slight to this category. There wasn't really that many games that had that much groundbreaking community support this year.
Yeah, yeah, I think Baldur's Gate was kind of the only choice because
Right, exactly.
it was the only game from last year that had like those consistent updates.
Right,
Plus, plus it also won game of the year last year. So I think it was like
exactly.
those two things combined kind of made it the only choice. And then like it's also like you don't want to do Fortnite again, right? Like
Right,
like
exactly.
we've done Fortnite so many times with both of these categories that it's just like, okay, like we know it's the best. Let's maybe stop.
Well, it was either that or Helldivers 2.
Yeah.
And even then, they had a mixed community support.
Yeah.
You know, it might have been really popular and like the updates were really popular, but like launch community support was not great at all.
Well,
And
and
that's
yeah.
mostly because of the parent like that's mostly because of Sony's fault. But,
Yeah.
you know, it still played a factor into it. Um so I mean, yeah, I mean this wasn't much of a surprise there. Um kind of if I'm going too fast just let me know, but
No, you're good.
ugh. um
Bless you.
but speaking of best ongoing game, which is very similar to best community support depending which way you want to spin it.
Yeah.
Um the the this one went to
Yeah.
Helldivers 2. So, I mean, it's like I said, it had really great updates,
Yeah.
like really popular updates, but I don't know as far as community aspect, it, you know,
Yeah. I
just,
think I think this category is probably the one that needs renaming the most, right? Like cuz I
right.
don't think it's a bad category cuz you know, like the live service thing is just kind of a part of games now, but I
Mm,
do think it's like we need like best ongoing and best community support. Like I would say community support is like part of what makes for a quote unquote best ongoing game, but nobody in their right mind would call Baldur's Gate 3 a live service game, right? Like that's
mm,
stupid. So I think like do you call it just best live service game? Do you call it like
Right.
best I don't know, best.
It's tough to say.
It's
Yeah.
it's hard to come up with a name, but like yeah, it's just like best ongoing doesn't exactly quite capture what we're actually talking about here.
Right.
But yeah. Anyways, Helldivers 2
Yeah,
definitely.
it's just tough. Like
Yeah.
I'm even sitting here like just thinking. I'm like I don't even know what to say because at the same time I almost kind of consider that into the same bubble as community support.
Sure.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
you know what
well,
I mean?
well, it's like yeah, like what's yeah, like why is Baldur's Gate 3 not an ongoing game, right? Like what's the distinction?
Right.
And I can tell you like yeah, I don't think like I know why it didn't win best ongoing, but I also couldn't tell you exactly why the distinction is there in the first place.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think there's not really much to say other than the idea of that category just being weird in the first place. Um,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, next was games for impact for Neva, which
Sure.
I don't even know the game, so
I
I'm ready to
believe
gloss over it. But
yeah, let me just make sure I'm remembering which game Neva was before I say anything. Yeah, I mean, it looked good. It looks good. It's just I haven't played it. And also, I think this category is a little fluffy, is maybe the best way to put it. Like, it's just kind of like games for impact sounds like game of the year to me, right? Like that to my ears, it's like if Neva had the biggest impact, why is it not nominated for game of the year, right? Like to me, that's like what game of the year is, right? Like I know technically it's like you're determining the quote unquote best game or whatever, right? But like on the same note, right? Like why if games for impact actually had an impact, why are none of the game of the year category nominees on that list, right? Like that it's
right.
just kind of like come on guys. like we know what you're doing, right? Like we know like what the category is, like what game had the most meaning, right? What game had the most like had the most message, right? Like stuff like that is like, which is fine, but you already have other categories that kind of do the same thing, right? Like best art direction, best score and music, best narrative, right? Like all of these things kind of cover what makes for a best for impact, right? Like that's kind of, so it's just kind of like,
well, part of me it's almost like okay, so you have that, or it could be also translated as innovation in accessibility, which is a whole other category.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
for me, that's what I would constitute games for impact to be. It's more about accessibility and
yeah, or
you
even
know,
or even just like if you wanted to say like games that push the medium forward, that's also a different thing, right? Like that's a different Because you could say like the whatever the first publicly available VR game
Mm-hmm.
was, right? I would say like, okay, yeah, like if you wanted to say like games for impact, like sure, I could see that, right? Or like
Right.
Guitar Hero or something like that, right? Like something
Yeah.
that was like crazy at the time.
Yeah.
Um, I would say, maybe like back in the day, like Pokemon Red and Blue, right? Like the first Pokemon games. Um, but that's not what this category is. That's
Mm-hmm.
clearly not what this category is. That's not what they're going for with the category. And so it just kind of ends up feeling like it feels pandery in the worst way possible. And that's not a good feeling when it's like it's not necessary, right? Like it's a Chinese game developer won best action game, right? Like what are we
Mm-hmm.
doing here? Right? Like we're I'm not saying that like there aren't problems that need to be solved. Like of course there are, but it feels again, it feels like fluff. It feels meaningless. We need a different either to me it's like either get rid of the category or find a new way of phrasing it because games for
Mm-hmm.
impact just isn't doing it for me. um, but what do I know? I mean, they've had the category for however long, so and they haven't gotten
Yeah.
rid of it yet. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's going to change. Um, but speaking of innovation and accessibility,
yeah.
Prince of Persia end up winning that category. Um, I
I'm glad
guess
it
I
won
don't think.
something.
Right, I'm glad
Honestly.
it won something. I don't think we played any of the games that was in the innovation in accessibility
Yeah, that's kind of funny. Yeah,
this year. Sometimes we get that.
yeah,
Um, where we
yeah,
can judge a little bit off of this, but yeah, this year is not really the year as far as that goes. I don't really have anything else to kind of add to it
yeah,
other than, you know, I guess that makes sense. I don't
yeah.
know.
The problem is neither of us are people who would benefit from these innovations, right? Like neither of us are people
Right.
who like have
Yeah,
that
that's the other thing.
those limitations. So like we're not even qualified to say like we barely go into the menus that
Exactly.
have these things, right? Like and so it's hard to um be a good judge of that. But I think the other thing too is that I think it's a little telling that like if you look at the list of games that were nominated, I do think it's like oh like I Prince of Persia being being maybe a different being maybe an exception. Like I wonder how much it cost to make these accessibility features happen. Because COD was on there, I think.
Hmm.
Hellblade was on there. Like these big expensive games. I think Spider-Man last year was on there. So like
Yeah.
um, and this is obviously money worth investing, but it is like
Hmm.
interesting. Like oh, you do wonder like oh how much of the budget do you need to have in order to make these things possible. Um,
Right.
so yeah. Anyways, just I this is actually one of the few categories that isn't just a genre or like merit category that I
Hmm.
actually really like, right? Like, because obviously you need best narrative, best art direction, best score, right? Like you need those.
Hmm.
You need best RPG, you need best indie, best debut indie game I can live with, right? Like best mobile, sure. Like but then like you get best family seems like a stretch to me. Best
Right.
adaptation is also like okay, like why is this here?
Well, it's like at times it does make sense because it's just like the certain year it is, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, um but then like you know uh but then we were talking about games for impact, best
Hmm.
ongoing game and best community support, like You know, I have issues with a lot of the categories that feel a little bit like fluff, like they don't mean anything. Um, Innovation and accessibility is like the one of those that I'm like, keep that, and I wish that like more categories were like this one, where it's like
Right.
it has a clear definition, it
Exactly.
knows what it's doing. There's no like um there's no way to like misconstrue what it means, and it's not overlapping with anything, right?
Right.
Like,
And it is an important spotlight.
yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
exactly.
Like we should be like showing uh praise for stuff
Yeah,
like that. Because
yeah,
even though we don't experience it, to give to be able to put spotlight on developers that are trying to innovate ways to expand player base, I think that should absolutely be applauded
yeah,
and make it absolutely, accessibility is a big thing for me. So,
yeah.
it's like I think this is a very important category.
No, yeah,
Um,
totally. Well, and I wanna clarify too. Like, games for impact, my issue with it is not like the fact that they are highlighting important topics, right? Like,
mhm,
that's not the problem. If they wanted to say like games for like if they wanted to categorize games for impact as like games that highlight important issues, right? Like, if they wanted to say like that's the category, right? Like, if they wanted to say like if they wanted to say like uh best social narrative or something like that, right? I don't know exactly how I would phrase it, but you know what I'm talking about, like, best portrayal of
mhm,
mental health,
right,
best tackling of a sensitive issue, right? Like, stuff like that. To me, that's like, okay, uh that's more honest, right? Like, that's more
right,
like that's what I'm looking for. Not And honestly, I almost kind of wish the Oscars would adopt something like that, because then it
mhm,
would leave a little bit more room for like an actual conversation about like, okay, what's the best movie, right? Like,
right,
whereas like the Oscars ends up being like a bunch of movies nobody's ever heard of, and then like maybe one or two that people have. That's a different discussion. But yeah, I do think it's like the reason I'm such a big fan of innovation and inaccessibility is it's not like Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown winning innovation and accessibility doesn't say anything about like the quality of like the game itself, right? Like, it doesn't say
mhm,
anything about that. But what it does say is like we are putting a spotlight on something that matters and that deserves praise. And um, I wish like I do wish more of these like extra categories were like that, but unfortunately they're not. So that's
yeah.
I have maybe more pressing concerns with the Game Awards, but this is obviously one that bothers me.
No, I get you, and I'm sure we'll dive into that a little bit later.
Yeah.
Um, but kind of going into kind of the same theme here
Yeah.
of games that I'm pretty sure I can't remember what the full nominees list is off the top of my head, but games that this category of I'm pretty sure none of us played any of the games that were nominated to us to have a real opinion on it. If I remember correctly, of our reaction to this
Sure.
win, uh, basically best audio design went to um, Senua Saga Hellblade 2.
Yeah.
Um,
Was Astrobot
cool.
nominated for this? I think it was. Um,
Which is kind of crazy, actually, now that I
yeah,
think about it.
kind of breaks the rule I was talking about earlier. But yeah, I think Yeah, I think Senua Saga, like, sure, I don't know. I just remember it releasing and not doing anything. Like,
Can I
yeah.
can I be honest about that?
Yeah.
Like, it seems like this is a Jeff Keighley intervention. Like,
Sure.
some odd reason, like, well, I guess maybe there is a real impactful reason to it, but the Game Awards has had such a fascination with this game for like 5 years now, and
Oh
almost
yeah.
as if they needed to give them a win uh, somewhere. And it's like, you know what? Let's put them in best. Let's give it to best audio design, and then best performance, right? Like, and not enough for anybody to say anything, but also we
Yeah.
we got to have it win something, right?
Sure. That
Maybe
I
that sounds
can
bitter and cynical, but like,
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
Yeah, to me it's just like I feel like best performance is so um I feel like this is another category, and I hate to beat a dead horse, but I feel like this is another category that feels like a bit of a um it feels like it's kind of it's aiming in the right direction, but it's missing
mm-hmm,
its target a little bit, where it's like performances in games, like the actors, the talent,
mm-hmm,
obviously a massive part of it, right? Like that's don't want to take away from any of the people who were nominated or anything like that. Like that's obviously just a huge part of like bringing characters to life, right?
mm-hmm.
At the same time, isn't it a little weird that like Aerith wasn't like uh like isn't it maybe Aerith's the wrong character, like okay, I have my example. Let's say sake of argument, Kirk Thornton was
Mm-hmm.
nominated for Shadow, right? Like let's just say for the sake of
Mm-hmm.
argument, um it would be a little weird, not because Kirk Thornton did a bad job, right? Far from it. But because Kirk Thornton isn't the only element that makes Shadow a believable character, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
there's the animators, there's the writers, there's um there's so much that goes into animating a game character, right? Like it's not
Mm-hmm.
just um it's again, it's not just an actor, right? Like um and I think this is kind of this is maybe more talking about like something that that like the entertainment industry as a whole has kind of had a hard time with, is like how do we accolade properly um like mocapped performances, right? Like cuz that's such
Mm-hmm.
a it's such a challenge, because a whole team goes behind a single character, right? Like um I'm fairly certain FF7 Rebirth wasn't motion capture, and so like even that's
Mm-hmm.
even more of an argument that like Brianna White is so far away from being the only element of that character, right? Like it's not just
Right.
Brianna White. And again, I don't want to take away from any of these people because they're all obviously super talented and super just, like I would like relish the opportunity to work with any of these people, right? Like again, it's nothing against them. It's just like best performance feels like it's missing a piece where it's like, if a Crash game comes out, I feel like Crash should, as like a character, be somewhere in that. Let Astrobot actually I think is a great example, right? Like that's like the quote unquote performance of that character. There's not like a vocal, there's not like this heavily emotional vocal performance.
Oh yeah,
but
no.
Like he's in a game so good that it got nominated for Game of the Year, right? Like he's in a game so that's like of that quality, and part of that is the appeal of Astro as a character, right? Like, and so like it's, I had an animation class and somebody pointed it out to me, like, yeah, the characters are the actors, right? And the animators are also the actors, right? Like we're all kind of the entire process is acting in a way that's not how people normally think of it, but that's really, it is a performance, right? It's just not how you typically think of it being a performance. And so it's like again, I cannot stress this enough. Do not want to take away from the people who got nominated and who won the awards now and in the past, right? Like obviously they deserve all of the accolades. At the same time, I am a little bit like best performance only being voice actors is a little bit like, okay, we need to like stretch our definition a little bit. We need to include Astrobot, Spyro the Dragon, Sonic the Hedgehog, Mario, right? Like these characters who even saying like, Troy Baker for Joel as The Last of Us, right? Like be specific about it and say like Troy Baker and the team at Naughty Dog who brought Joel to life, right? Like because it's not just Troy Baker, right? Like it's there's a whole team. Yeah. Anyways, another soapbox from Ezra. I'm sorry. I keep like poking holes in these categories when it's mostly just like I just want like the right things to get the right credit, right? Because I think if you said to me like, yeah, maybe Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is not like the greatest piece of video games released this year, but like the portrayal of Senua is so good that it deserves the win. Like if you said that to me, I'd be like, okay, like sure, I'll accept that. But that's not what the category feels like. You know what I mean? That's not like what the it feels like. It's just like, yeah, this actress did such a good job portraying the character, and it's like that's not the whole picture, right? Like that's not the whole story. So yeah.
Damn.
Anyways, best performance.
Very good points.
I'll try to not like go into too many tangents.
Oh no, you're fine.
Before the main one, I have a big point to make towards like the end, but yeah, I'll try to keep the rest of my I think that's kind of the last of like my big soapboxes. So yes.
Well, the next one is, I don't think we're going to get any rebuttal out of this.
Yeah.
Rightfully deserved. And my only true win of the night goes to Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for best score in music.
Yeah.
I swear, I think I would have lost my mind if this did not get that.
Yeah.
the win. Like if Final Fantasy VII Rebirth did not get a single win, including this one, I
Yeah.
would be. I don't know what I would be. I think I would just swear off the Game Awards. As drastic
Yeah.
as that sounds,
Yeah. I think
maybe I wouldn't.
the only game I would have accepted uh this award going to would have been Metaphor. Um and that's really just because uh like when the soundtrack goes hard, it goes hard.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, Final Fantasy deserved that win. It deserved. I think
Hmm.
it kind of deserved the win, just kind of on behalf of the series, right? Like
Right.
just like yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I think that's I think well deserved, and honestly, if Stellar Blade or Astrobot would have won, I would have been like, "What are you talking about?" I actually don't think
It's like,
Astrobot should have been on this list, to be honest. Um,
yeah. I mean, it's got one theme,
well, and
to my knowledge.
it's a decent soundtrack. It's just not like it's just
Yeah.
not up there. You know what I mean? It's
Hmm.
not one of the greats in my mind. But maybe I just need to go back and listen to it again. But I don't. Yeah. Anyways.
But yeah, the next two categories. This is about the point in which I started getting really frustrated that Final Fantasy wasn't winning, uh, and I'm sure Ezra was over the moon over this. So,
Yeah.
um, best art direction went to Metaphor.
Which
Um,
honestly, I think had you played Metaphor, even if it hadn't beaten out your like game of the year, even if it hadn't like topped Final Fantasy VII Rebirth for game of the year for you, I think you still would have been like, yeah, best art direction. Like I think, um, yeah. Although in fairness,
yeah.
it wasn't even nominated for best art direction, so you know,
Oh yeah, that's true. I forgot about that.
uh,
I was
which
mixing up categories then.
Shadow of the Erd Tree was, which is like
Puzzling.
okay. Also, arguably, this is one of those instances, right? Like Games for Impact, Neva's on this list. Why didn't it win Best Art Direction? Right? No hate,
Hmm.
just like what's going on. But yeah. Anyways, Metaphor, fantastic game. Art direction is out of this world. And I will say, I think something that doesn't get talked about enough is that like it takes a lot of cues from Persona 5, but it doesn't
Hmm.
mimic Persona 5. Right? Like it's not exactly the
Oh no.
same. If you liked Persona 5's art direction, there's actually a decent chance you won't vibe with Metaphors. Right? Like I'm not saying that that's a guarantee, but I am saying that like there is a real like Metaphor is not the same as Persona. So just getting that out there does a good
Yeah.
job distinguishing itself.
Well, I mean, going into the narrative portion,
Yeah.
which I guess it's a remake. You already had the narrative before, but at the same time, over 100 hours of quality narrative, expanding and really developing
yeah.
these relationships, these dynamics. Like that's all really Final Fantasy VII Rebirth did. Like they really put
Yeah.
a meat into the narrative, and you know, I can't speak for Metaphor, but
Sure.
man, this is hurt.
So I'm gonna say I think there's a little bit of contextual uh, advantage that Metaphor
Mm,
has in that it is literally a game about an election that came out at the end of an election year. Right, like
that's
it
also
came out,
fair.
it came out right before the election happened, and
Hmm.
as I was playing it I was like, I am feeling all of this, right? Like it was
Hmm.
really like poignant. I think it probably a way the developers didn't even realize would happen, right? I think they just wrote the
Right.
story and it just kind of turned out that way. But I do think that there is like a kind of like a happy accident thing, right? It's really not one to one with life, right? Like there's a lot that Metaphor does that's not quite uh, it's just not like it's not a direct allegory for the 2024 election. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think it
Hmm.
has that like I think it was like topical in a way that none of these other games really were, right? Like none of these other games were topical. I think Metaphor had that like just slight advantage, and I think that's how it pulled through. And I think it executes on it pretty solidly as well. Like I think um, especially after Persona 5, which I like Persona 5 a lot, but I think its storyline is gets a bit like hampered in places. I think the way that Metaphor kind of nails it is really impressive, and
Hmm.
yeah. So again, I whether or not you would have enjoyed Metaphor over Final Fantasy, I couldn't really tell you, but I will say I think it is justified in the sense that like it was topical. So yeah,
Fair enough. Very fair enough. I get you. Um. So I mean that brings us to best game direction, going to Astrobot.
yep,
Which I mean, if it's going to win Game of the Year, this makes sense to me.
yeah,
Like surprisingly, I know I've been bashing and all, but it makes a lot of sense. The game direction behind this game, I mean, it's not just for this. Astrobot. One thing to keep in mind is it's not just for this game. It's been for this whole entire series
yeah,
because they've been demos up until this point.
yeah. They've
They've been
been
tech demos,
yeah, they've just been tech demos. Yeah, and
and
the playroom or whatever it was like. I mean, I would have said like, yeah, like put this up on put nominate this for best platformer, right? Like
right,
something like that, right? Like I would have been more than happy with that. So I think yeah, I do kind of agree with that. Like it is kind of for the whole thing, right?
yeah. So I mean, going into the Game of the Year, you know, Astrobot won, and I am heartbroken.
Yeah,
The Final Fantasy VII didn't win. Am I surprised that Astrobot won? No. Honestly,
yeah,
probably. Even if I played Astrobot, it still would have been my second choice. Like, there's just no
sure.
way it would top Final Fantasy VII.
Yeah,
No
there.
way.
Yeah, it would be a mountainous task.
Exactly. But it would definitely be in that number two spot.
Sure.
And so, am I like heartbroken that it? Like, I'm heartbroken that Final Fantasy VII lost. Am I heartbroken that it lost to Astrobot or upset? No.
Yeah.
I would have been furious if it went to Shadow of the Erd Tree
Yeah.
for reasons like we started off this topic, like it started off the Game Awards
Yeah.
discussion, and just because it also won last year.
Yeah.
Like
2 years
there's
ago, but
just
yeah.
oh yeah, 2 years ago. So like it's I like I said, I would not be in a very good mood about the Game Awards.
Yeah.
But I guess that kind of leads into, and I'll open this up in a second, but like it kind of leads into my overall opinion of the awards itself. Like throughout the night, like a lot of them are like, yeah, I didn't get my way on them. Were they kind of as expected? Yeah.
Yeah.
Other than like best performance, I don't think I was genuinely shocked by a single award.
Yeah. And even best performance is like, am I like surprised that Hellblade won? No. I'm just mostly like, Hellblade came out, didn't do anything. It was like 6 hours, and for what? Like, it is a little bit kind of my feeling on that game.
Right.
But yeah, like otherwise, I wasn't really surprised by really anything. It was mostly just like, if I was wrong, it was because I figured it would go one way and not the other, right? Like it wasn't really there weren't really any like shocking moments. Honestly, I think the most shocking moment for me was best narrative for Metaphor. I think that was like legitimately like, oh, I didn't realize I didn't realize
You were sweeping.
that was possible. Yeah, well, yeah, no,
That
I was,
point.
I was like, oh, I didn't realize we were there.
Actually, that leads up into a discussion of I need to see something real quick. I need to count. Um, I want to recount one thing.
Oh, I should also mention Black Myth Wukong, one player's voice, doesn't really mean
Oh
anything,
yeah,
but just to mention that.
yeah. So interestingly enough, there was a greater chance of Metaphor winning Game of the Year than like looking back at like if you look at category wins,
Yeah,
there was a genuinely great chance that Metaphor could have won had it swayed in a certain direction because Astrobot only won 4,
yeah,
Metaphor won 3, and Balatro only won 3.
yeah,
But Balatro only won 3 because I mean it's an indie game
yeah.
and it's a
It
mobile
got, it got,
game.
yeah, it
Right.
got it got best indie game, it got best debut indie game, and it got best mobile game. So yeah, it's like yeah,
But when you get best narrative and best art direction,
yeah,
those are two really high category games.
yeah.
It is like
It's
you could make an argument that like oh Astrobot didn't really win anything else besides that best game direction and best game of the like game of the year.
yeah,
Why
yeah. Well,
didn't that go
yeah,
to Metaphor at the same time?
yeah. I think there really was a um. Is it okay if I start on my rant? You can interrupt me at any
Yeah,
time, of course, but
you could start.
yeah. So I think so I think in a lot of ways this award came down to a statement. And what I mean by that is not like um, a political stance, right? Like not like
Mm-hmm.
not an issues thing, not something like that. I think it was a statement like what I think the question that Jeff Keighley had going into this was how do I regain some of that lost impact from last year, right? Because remember, last year, right, Baldur's Gate, that was a shoe in, right? Like there was
Mm-hmm.
no, my game of the year was Tears of the Kingdom. Other people's game of the year was like, uh, so many games came
Spider-Man
out,
2.
like Spider-Man
Yeah.
2, like, so 2023 was such a like, but Baldur's Gate 3 was shoe in. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there wasn't really um, a lot to say there, right? With 2024, so 2023 ended up feeling a little phoned in, right? There were reveals and there were performances and stuff, but like, and then like the please wrap it up,
Right.
and all that stuff. Like, it felt very wrong, and very
Mm-hmm.
phoned in. So I think like Jeff Keighley went into this game awards saying with like the mindset of like I want not only is this like the 10th anniversary, so like we got to make this a banger, but
Mm-hmm.
also uh how do I recapture some of the magic?
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was a real question like because in the middle of the show they had this big thing about the game changer, right? And this guy who
Mm-hmm.
they've the industry has been devastated by layoffs after layoffs, and we've got this guy who's helping people find jobs, and we've got this game changer award, and we're going to make a huge video about him and all that stuff. I do think this was a game awards about statements and about saying like at least trying to say like do better,
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're happy with, this is what we're not happy with. And Metaphor uh is a fantastic game. So is Final Fantasy, so is Balatro, so are all of the game of the year nominees. um like I think I've played one, two, three, four, five. I've played 5 of the 6 Game of the Year nominees this year,
Mm-hmm.
which is actually kind of rare. I don't usually play that many of them. All of them are fantastic. What's the one game that the most people were saying like this is what I want more of, and if we keep making these games, the industry will be better for it? It's
Right.
Astrobot, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like the only uh it's the only game that can be said for. And I think Metaphor, as good as it is an Atlas RPG, right? Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not anything. It's not anything different, right? If it had won Game of the Year, I would have been super happy about it. But nobody would have walked away saying like, "Oh, that makes a statement," right? Like people would have said like, or the statement it would have made would be like, "Oh, people like JRPGs now," right? Like that would have been the only
Right.
takeaway, right? Like if Final Fantasy won, that would have been even less of a statement, right? Like it would have been just like uh,
Yeah.
it would have been an open world game. What it fantastic open world game. Don't get me wrong, but again, I'm just talking about like what's the statement here? Like what's the um, and I think insofar as that was the goal, right? Insofar as that was like the um, I think it was kind of I think it was somewhat successful. Um,
Mm.
I think the Game Changer Award felt, and uh, as I've heard other takes about it, feels a bit uh, hypocritical. Might be the wrong word, but it feels a little bit like Jeff's highlighting this guy, but then he's
Mm-hmm.
also making these big deals to get these massive reveals with Sony and Microsoft and all these places
Mm-hmm.
that are actively doing the layoffs, right? Um, but then on the other hand, right, like the Larian's studio head coming out to give out uh, the Game of the Year award and delivering this just probably one of the best speeches given at a game awards, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
one of the best like I think somebody called it a manifesto, and I think that was the best way to put it, right? Like he just kind of laid out kind of what he thinks, um, and so I think limited success, but what was successful, and I do think that like um, I do hope that like it if Final Fantasy VII Rebirth not winning Game of the Year means we get like Jack and Sly Cooper uh and these new smaller games, it's great to see like Okami is coming back, right? Like smaller games that aren't like trying to be as like cutting edge all the time. um
Mm-hmm.
so we're not like breaking the industry's back trying to make them. That's kind of a sacrifice I'm willing to make, to be honest, right? Like I do think that's kind of a uh I think that's kind of worth it. So would I have preferred Final Fantasy get the win? Absolutely. Would I have preferred Metaphor get the win? Absolutely. Is Astrobot a really good game? Yeah. Is it the game that makes the biggest statement? Also, probably yeah. So I think it's kind of a. I'm kind of like, okay, you know what I mean. Like I'm kind of like, I'll give this to you. Am I super happy? Am I super happy with the state of the industry? No. Do I wish Jeff would do a better job at like being on the side of the workers? Absolutely. But I will take what I can get. So yeah, that's my that's my soapbox. I'll get off of it. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is um, a big focus on what the statement was, compared to what last year. I think last year left a really bad taste in the mouth for a lot of viewers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about it last year, and honestly, as things have progressed throughout the year, I really did not like last year's Game Awards
Yeah.
practically at all. Um, you know, I mean, there were some fun reveals, but like they weren't like massive reveals. But that's not like, I mean, that's not what it's all about. I mean, that's what we haven't even been focusing on that yet. I mean, but the thing is like as far as structure goes, Jeff Keighley has been, so adamant about like him and his team has been so adamant about focusing, condensing, making sure that we end on time because that was a huge issue over the years. But he lost a lot of the sight of what makes the Game Awards, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think that really showed last year. And, you know, the more I thought about it this year, the more I realized that, this is like one of the things that I was like really glad about, like waiting it, like getting some time to think about, because like all that in addition to what you said about, as far as especially with the layoffs, very felt it's a sticky situation, because what do you do? But at the same time, the way they were presenting it
Yeah.
was very like, we're going to call it out but not call it out, and that it just didn't provide that right message. But
Yeah.
honestly, other than that, they did a really good structure of a show.
Yes.
Like,
Yeah, absolutely.
like they listened to the criticism of allowing the winners to actually talk, to actually take in the moment that they actually won that award, putting the focus back on the awards as a main thing. Um, they and what they did to supplement it, to cut down on time, which I thought was a great thing that just needed to happen. Like, it was getting so bad. Last year was really bad on it, and I think that this year you didn't even notice it at all. They cut it completely, almost completely, and I really, really love that they did this. And they spent less time on the focus of, yes, we're going to give you reveals, but we're not going to spend 10 to 20 minutes with one developer talking about an upcoming game prior to the reveal, right?
Yeah.
That has always been a thing that has plagued the Game Awards. And while yes, it is cool to get these spotlights with the director, like these developers and directors, like I mean, let's be honest, let's that takes up a considerable chunk of time for the award show, when it's really not really about the award show.
Yeah.
I mean, you could talk about like you can have things that are like, yeah, this is what's to come, and and the way they structured it this year, like, yeah, this next reveal is, and then they would just show it, and then maybe they'll have like a developer come out and talk about it for a brief second,
Yeah.
but there was never like a build up prior to it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, the only instance, and it's kind of funny, cuz I was actually willing to let it slide for this one, was
Mm-hmm.
uh Joseph Ferris on a Split Fiction. Just
Oh yeah,
cuz like
yeah.
he's a Game Awards staple, right? Like that
Mm-hmm.
that legendary moment where like he said he drops an F bomb at
Mm-hmm.
F the Oscars, right? Like that is such a iconic moment. He'll always be um he's just like it's the best, right? Like it's
Right.
he's it's not the Game Awards without him at this point. And so like for him to get up on stage, and remember he won 2021's Game of the Year, so it's like he's also like
Mm-hmm.
kind of a legit guy too, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
he's
100%.
he's kind of like, yeah, you kind of have to respect him. So for him to get up on stage and be like, yeah, here's my game, I'm gonna talk about it for a little while, is like, I'll let it slide. Did it go on a little long? Yeah, but like, sure, like I'll give this to you.
But it wasn't too long, because I will admit, I never like, was it long? Yeah, but what was I like? Oh my god, we're really eating up the runtime on this.
Yeah,
Like, no, never once did that cross my mind. Like,
is that? I don't doubt you. Is that because Split Fiction looks really good?
no,
Oh,
I
okay.
really do believe that. Like, I I believe that because they didn't really cut anything else out of the show. and what they
Sure.
did cut was what was needed to give those creators to talk about, like those winners to actually talk about the game that they made in the year. Like they finished on time this year
That's true.
without having to
They
say
did.
please wrap it up. We still got the performances, we still got the reveals. The only thing
Yeah.
they cut was just that extended amount of time that was happening with we're going to talk with a creator for 20 minutes and then reveal what it is. Or at that point, basically say what it is without, like, there was not even a reveal at that point. It's like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
Kojima comes on stage. Oh yeah, we're going to be talking about either Death Stranding 2 or a new game.
Yeah.
You know,
We're
we know he's
gonna
working on.
show 15 seconds of pre-rendered actors looking into the camera and screaming, and then go to
Right.
Kojima and Jordan Peele talking to each other for
20
7 minutes or
minutes.
however long,
Yeah.
right? Like for
I'm
an
not even
absurd
joking.
amount of
It was
time.
20 minutes.
Yeah, no, I believe it. Yeah, it's just like, yeah, don't. It was just so like, okay, like we get it. Kojima's a legend.
Mm-hmm.
Like let's just let's let's cool it a little bit, please. Um, yeah, I think yeah, I also think it did really help that there were so many reveals that were just
Right.
like uh yeah, here's a reveal, can't tell you what it is.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there were like there's so many reveals that were like, yeah, here's the reveal, and then it would just be the reveal, and it was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, like, oh, cool. And yeah, I think that also helped because it was like, okay, we have to wait until after the reveal to talk about it more. um
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I think that helped. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I do agree. I think the structure of the show is a lot better this year. I hope that they kind of. I know that they won't have like as many like earth shattering announcements as this year, because like there were a
Mm-hmm.
lot of like massive announcements, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
Okami 2, massive. Uh,
Yeah.
uh, Team Eco, Shadow of the Colossus, new game, like
Yeah.
massive. Uh, New Naughty Dog game, huge,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like that, like Witcher 4, like massive. So like, we won't get another Game Awards like that for quite some time.
Oh yeah.
But uh, but I think that like the way it was like paced, I think was a lot. I agree. I think it was a lot better, and I think they did a good job of like having those reveals while also giving the spotlight to the devs who won, right? Like, because I think
Right.
that's very important. Um, and I hope that, like, I know they kind of have a new Muppet every year,
Mm-hmm.
but I hope that they just keep uh, the hecklers. I hope
Oh,
that
it's
they just
so
keep those guys.
great.
It was so funny.
It was such a great metaphor of like just outside noise that plagues the game awards.
Yeah,
I'm just like this hear that banter of like I see what you're doing. You're really doing a social commentary of like Twitter and you
yeah,
know like it was such a great like that was great. I hope like I really liked Animal last year, but
yeah. Well, that's because
that
Animal's
was
always funny.
yeah, exactly. Um so I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I hope they stay. I think that was really good. And it was and they did it nice to where like this time around it wasn't like a long bit with the Muppets. It was just
Yeah.
like, oh, we'll just cue back to him every few seconds just for a quick snarky comment,
Yeah.
and that's that. Like it wasn't
Well,
taking
yeah.
up too much
Quick jab.
runtime.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it was
Yeah.
just like, oh, there's a running bit, like there's a running gag throughout the show, that
Well,
I thought
and
was pretty funny.
the amount of, I mean, the amount of just devastating blows too,
Oh
right?
yeah,
Like Jeff Keighley really took it on the chin for that one, because like the one where they were like, yeah, Jeff Keighley is Hideo Kojima's best friend, but does Kojima know that, right?
right.
Like, that was the amount of jokes that were like as hard as that one was like crazy. So I mean, I hope they do it again. But
Exactly.
yeah, that was whew. I was I wonder if Kojima knew what they were saying or not.
Hmm.
I wonder if they knew what exactly was happening, or if they were just like
Right.
letting him
Yeah, just letting
be
the bit go and
oblivious.
just
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah.
Um, I will say the only thing that I will say about the structure is, and this is the probably the only gripe I have about the structure, is the structure in which the reveals happen. Like you and I talked about, like, yeah, these were massive reveals. They were great reveals. I firmly believe the first reveal and the last reveal should have been switched.
The first Wait, sorry, say that again.
I think the first reveal and the last reveal should have been switched.
The first reveal of the night?
Mm.
You're not saying Ninja Gaiden. You're
No,
saying
I'm saying the first reveal of the actual show. So,
so
like the
the
actual start of the show,
okay, let me which one was
which
that again?
was that was The Witcher.
Okay, yeah, okay, okay. Yeah. I can see
I
that.
think the I think The Witcher should have ended on at the end, and Naughty Dog's reveal of a game
Sure.
started the show, because there's more mystery of like, what kind of game is this? Like, why are we like putting such an examination of like this being a big deal, and then then you just see from the studio that brought you, not Ratchet and Clank, Crash
Crash Bandicoot.
Bandicoot,
Yeah.
Jack and Dexter, like, Uncharted, The Last of Us. Like, then it would have occurred to everybody of like, oh, okay, this is Naughty Dog's next game. That's a way to set the tone without, like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, rather, where that way you're not, which is really bad to say, but at the same time, it's like you're ending on a sequel. Like,
Yeah.
like you're
Yeah.
ending on a follow up reveal
Yeah.
that, honestly, I don't think anybody predicted to be shown at the Game Awards this year.
Oh yeah, no, I would if somebody said like I'm from the future, The Witcher 4 is getting shown at the Game Awards, I'm like lock that guy up. He's crazy.
Right,
um
exactly.
like I think and I think too, we were talking earlier about like GTA, right?
Hmm.
The Witcher is another like prestige get out of the way game,
Exactly.
right? Like that it's another one of those. So yeah, I think I agree. I think also uh getting into the weeds a little bit. I think there's something to be said about uh Okami 2 and the fact that that
I was going to
game
bring that up.
got uh such a fanfare, right? So much of one
Right.
that at first when we were watching, I was like, is this Zelda?
Uh
Um
huh.
and And I think the I think what's interesting about it is that, like, to me, that's the kind of thing I would save for the end as well, right? Like, that's the kind of thing. I get that, like, Naughty Dog's game was kind of the one more thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of agree that, like, if you're going to do one more thing, you do a sequel, right? Like, you do,
Right.
or, something that's just huge, right? Like, you know,
It's
uh,
got to be something that someone recognizes, right?
yeah, it has to,
That's
yeah.
kind of my thing.
Yeah, maybe it's not even a sequel. Maybe it's just like a new franchise. Like maybe it's like Mario and Sonic platformer, something like that,
Right.
right? Like something, again, not necessarily a sequel, but like a
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, like they revealed that like Pac-Man Metroidvania game
Right.
in the show, right? Like you could say like sure, like save that for the end. Like that'd be kind of weirdly received, but like
Right.
it's a known thing. Whereas like yeah, I think you're right. I do think like
Well, it's like it just. I think a lot. I mean, there's the. I think there would have been a lot more excitement and a lot more engagement on Intergalactic if it really started off the Game Awards with everyone just being puzzled and then like
sure.
realizing, okay, okay, so that's it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're really setting the tone. This could lead into like many other things that we're not expecting for the night. I think we were kind of expecting the Naughty Dog reveal, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Um,
I feel like
it
it was
wasn't like
kind of in the
impossible,
air. Yeah. I feel
but
like it
just
was
like
yeah. I agree.
even adding more to the case of why it should have been in the front. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a one more thing. I think what really lands a one more thing is something that you're just not expecting at all. You know, and that's tough to do. That's tough to judge.
Yeah.
But I like. I think we were chasing a pipe dream, but because the more I think about it, I don't think it would ever get a one more thing, unless maybe it would be Yoko Taro's next game. Like, I think we were really pushing it for like 5 seconds there, and then realized it wasn't that. and but as far as the plausibility of like that being a one more thing, I don't know if that would ever happen. But
Yeah. Yeah, I
I don't know.
think yeah. Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything you say. I also think it's just like I really don't want to get into culture war stuff, but I feel like I have to address it. I think uh I do think that there is a uh an element too that's like
Mm-hmm.
we maybe could have avoided some of that backlash. Maybe not, like who knows?
Mm-hmm.
But we maybe could have like avoided some of that backlash if it was at the front.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because there's going to be noise either way, right? Like people are going to
Right.
say crap regardless, right? But I think you're right. I think if it had been at the front and people would have had time to like if it hadn't been like the very last thing from the
Mm-hmm.
show, I think it probably would have we could have avoided some of that like again, just the crap, right? Like just
Right.
all sorts of complete nonsense. Like let's be clear, all of it's just
Mm-hmm.
nonsense. Everybody involved is fighting a losing battle, and it's not useful. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so
I think you
yeah,
I think you hit the money right on there. Like 100%. Like, yeah. I mean, that's like real gripe of the show is just the way it's structured as far as um, how the reveals happen. And the other thing is too, like, it was really front loaded, the Game Awards, to where it didn't feel like the middle section was boring. It felt like the last third was boring a little bit, which was kind of weird, like a weird feeling where it's like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get sleepy now, type of thing. And I guess this is the way I see it. I think I would have moved some structure of the trailers and kind of see how that would have fit as a more balanced piece. But as far as the structure of the show itself,
Yeah.
as far as the way the awards were presented, um, I gotta say it was structured excellently. Um,
Agreed.
do you got any more final thoughts as far as the Game Awards uh,
Um,
go?
Let me just make sure I'm not forgetting anything. Um, oh, uh, I mentioned it very briefly earlier. That Ninja Gaiden game looks awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Um, cool to see Onimusha back, and yeah, I mean that's it. Not a whole lot like for me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, oh, also I wanted to propose to you on the podcast, Caleb.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe Split Fiction should be a game we play together.
I think that'd be fun. I'd be on board for that. I think it'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
I think it'd be chaotic. Yeah, I'm definitely on board with that. I don't know when it's coming out. Is it coming out in
It's
25
coming
or is it
out
coming out in
soon. It's
26?
coming out in like March.
Oh, okay. Okay. So yeah.
Yeah, March
Yeah.
6th.
I'll have to
Yeah.
get that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I think they announced. Am I going crazy?
They did. I think they did announce the release date
Yeah.
at the
It's
Game
March 6th.
Awards.
I'm trying to remember if it's. I feel like I remember them saying like both players don't have to own the game, or am I crazy?
Oh. Yeah, I don't know.
Let me not spread misinformation. As with Hazelight's previous games, it will utilize a Friends Pass system in which owner of the game can invite a friend to play together for free. Oh.
Oh,
Oh, and
nice.
it supports crossplay as well. So I could play it
That's
on
wild.
PC and you could play it on PS5, apparently.
Yeah.
Although I don't know how that works. So, anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. Press press Q to jump.
I can play
That'll be my
control.
prompt at
Oh, I
That'll
see.
be
I
my
see.
prompt on the on the PlayStation 5.
No,
I
it'll
want
be
you to
fine.
jump on.
I could just hook up a DualSense to my PS or my PC and we'll be fine.
That's fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways,
Um.
yeah, that pretty much completes my Game Awards takes. It was a good show, but
Yeah.
as always, there's room for improvement.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Um. There was one small thing that I was gonna say, but I forgot what I was gonna say. So I think I'm just gonna move on. um. The uh. So yeah, I mean that kind of concludes our like Game Awards portion of the show. Um. Really cool year. Really great year, to be honest with you. This is among the better shows.
Yeah.
Um, you know, yeah. I mean, we'll have a year in review very soon.
Yeah.
So essentially, our own version of the Game Awards, which is totally not going to be predictable on my end. But
Yeah. Well,
the
and I'm kind of thinking the way my head is going, and Kayla and I still have to hash this out. The way my head is going is more in like a uh I almost said the Lab Rats podcast. More sorry I like this 2024
exactly.
year in review, not
Hmm.
video games in year in review, right? So
Exactly.
we'll
Yeah.
probably talk about, maybe Sonic Frontiers, Shadow
Hmm.
Generations, stuff like that is going to end up in that conversation more than, yeah. So, anyways, just
Yeah.
setting the stage a little bit more on that. So,
Well, speaking of Sonic and setting the stage, 'twas the night before Sonic Sonic 3.
indeed.
And yeah, I mean, you and I are both going to see it tomorrow.
Yep, I'm kind of
Um,
freaking out.
yeah, I mean, this movie strangely has really high expectations from me.
Yeah,
Like it's like, like the first two Sonic movies, I was like, yeah, you know, I'll I'll go see it. I don't have like, it's just got to be a fun adaptation, right? It
yeah,
doesn't have to like it doesn't have to be like one to one, of an adaptation.
yeah,
But this time I'm like, they better have this, they better have this, they better have that. Like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, like Keanu Reeves being a Shadow, really, really high bar of a casting choice that I hope
yeah,
I don't get let down on.
yeah,
Like, type of thing. Like, it's just like, it's going to be fun. And I guess I wanted to close out this podcast with asking, like, what is your feelings right now
oh
um
man.
as far as the movie goes? You excited? I know you're nervous, but like
I'm always going to be nervous for a
excited?
Sonic
Are
thing.
you concerned? Are you still like having that hype level that we got from the original trailer?
So, have you seen the Rotten Tomatoes score? Cuz it just came out today.
I did see the Rotten Tomato score.
Okay,
Was
so
it 89%?
yeah, it's gotten an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is shocking. Um
Yeah.
so I mean, I have to say I'm actually not like I said, I'm always going to be nervous for a Sonic thing, but I'm actually not like as nervous as I was.
Hmm.
And I think a large part of that is just like, um, for one thing, I rewatched Sonic 1 and Sonic 2 over the past couple of days, and
See, I
uh,
should have done that.
I still really like those movies. Um,
Hmm.
and so and I think like the handling of Sonic as a character is so like good for me that like it's
Hmm.
just like I trust whoever is working on this movie franchise that like
Hmm.
they know how to do this, right? Like I think
Yeah.
there's a um it's not a situation where it's like where I feel like they're missing something. Like no, I feel like they know what they're doing. um I also think just everything I see inspires more and more confidence, I guess, is kind of
Well,
uh my way of putting it.
absolutely.
Like
I mean,
I go ahead.
oh, go ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, like, um, I mean, I definitely understand, like, everything, like, keeps giving me more confidence. Like, Keanu Reeves is doing, like, he's at the red carpet premiere of the movie, and there's this kid, like, there's a kid, like, a fan, just like asking Keanu, like, I don't know if you've seen this interview yet, but
I
like,
haven't. Yeah.
he he goes, the kid goes. if you could pick any superpower in the world, what would you be? He's like, well, in the Sonic world, I would pick teleportation. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
give you credit of like just like totally being locked in on like the lore of Sonic and just be like, hey, I'm gonna move past your kind of question of just like a broad question that's not really about Sonic and really like relate
And
it
like,
back
yeah, hone
to it.
in.
So it's
Yeah.
just a small subtlety that I was like, yeah, I like that. Like it's like it's kind of putting me at ease a little, but
Yeah. Well, I also, so there's another element to this that the movie DLC came out
mm-hmm.
last week for Shadow Generations.
Oh, it did come out. Okay.
Um, and I played that. I played it a bunch, and it's mwah, chef's kiss. It's awesome. It's just like an awesome level. Um, Keanu is also pretty cool in that uh, in that stage. Um, they gave him like all of Shadow's base game voice lines, so like when he says chaos
Mm.
control and stuff like that, like uh, so like that was so it was just like really cool to hear Keanu Reeves say that stuff. Um, so I think like that also really helps that it's like oh I can know that like okay the portrayal of Shadow in the movie is going to be really cool. Um, I also so I'm hearing from like Sonic fans that have already
Mhm.
seen the movie that like it's gas, right? Like that it's awesome.
Mhm.
Um, so like that's also really helping. Um, and yeah, I mean, I just like uh, there's there's like a Keanu Reeves uh spotlight or something. I don't remember what it's
Mhm.
called, but like Keanu Reeves joins the Sonic universe, and I think like one of the first things they have him like recorded saying is like as Shadow is like you took everything from me and now humanity is gonna pay the price, right? Like and it's just like uh that's the kind of thing that like I talk about this all the time, but like I never thought I would see that Shadow again, right? Like I thought that
Mhm.
Shadow was dead and gone back in 2006, right? Um,
Right.
and uh, and so to like see this massive movie production with
Mhm.
Jim Carrey, Idris Elba, Keanu Reeves as mainline Sonic characters. Um, and that's James Marsden, right? Like that's not to take away
Right.
from the rest of the awesome cast, right? Just like those are like the three biggest names. Um, I think it's just like it's just so like surreal to me. Um, and it's like, man, what a perfect way to like cap off just like one of the best years to be a Sonic fan it
Mhm.
has ever been, right? Um, like it has been a really long time since I was just excited about enjoying Sonic the Hedgehog as a franchise.
Right.
And I'm super excited for Shadow for Sonic 3. I'm very excited for Shadow in Sonic 3. Um, And yeah, I also want to say, just because it's been bothering me, people rag on the like music choices that they've made
Oh yeah.
for the Sonic titles. I would actually say not only are they uh, not as bad as you think they are, I think most of them are pretty good and fit perfectly well with what they're going for. And the only reason people have a problem with it is because it's not the exact music from the
Right, it's
games.
not the traditional, yeah.
And I hear that. At the same time, like,
It's a film,
it's not only is it a
to put it
film,
bluntly.
it's also like the music in the games isn't just like inherently better, right?
Right.
Like I love Sonic music. I think it's some of the best gaming scores out there, right? Like I have like the Sonic Frontiers boss themes in my head all the time, right? Like it's I would just make that
Mm-hmm.
clear, right? Like I think, what I'm made of is an epic boss theme. Like
Mm-hmm.
if they play Live and Learn at all in the movie, I'm gonna like die, right? Um,
All of Me is going to be a big one for me,
I
but
mean that might be Shadow's theme for all you know, right? Like that might be
yeah,
it might an orchestral version might be Shadow's theme. Um, but
it could be.
but at the same time, it's like you go with what fits the vibe, right? And you go
Right.
with, like you're gonna tell me that, oh shoot, what's it called? Shoot, what's it called? The song
What do you
they
say?
played in Sonic 2 during the dance fight. Um, Bruno Mars. Uh,
Oh, that was in Sonic 2? I thought that was in
yeah,
Sonic 1. Oh,
yeah,
I guess Tails was there, wasn't he?
yeah. Tails was there. What's it called?
Um, Uptown Funk? Is
Uptown
that it?
Funk. Yes, you're gonna tell
I
me.
couldn't remember the exact song, but I was like trying to think of like Bruno Mars songs that was like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, that's fair. But like, you're gonna tell me that like they're having a dance off, and Uptown Funk doesn't perfectly encapsulate Sonic the Hedgehog in that moment.
Mm,
You know what I mean? Like that. That's like come on. Like what are we talking about? This is a cartoon
mm-hmm.
hedgehog who
Exactly.
one of his lines in Sonic Adventure 2 is talk about low budget flights, no food or movies, I'm out of here, right? Like that's that's Uptown Funk. Like that's the vibe, right? Like that's that's
Mm-hmm.
that's what we're doing. So it bothers me. Like I get it, right? Like do I want do I want Undefeatable to play in the final battle? Do I want, Live and Learn, Open Your
Mm-hmm.
Heart, What I'm Made Of? Like all of these just iconic, epic songs. Absolutely. Does the music direction inherently take away from these movies? Absolutely not. And I think you're being dishonest if you think that they're actually bad when they're not. Like I think it's
Mm-hmm.
like I don't think it's uh you don't have to like it, but I think it's like
Right.
to say that like oh the movies it actually takes away from the movies is like that's kind of not what we're doing here, right? Like that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
not like it's not fair, right? Cuz Mario did it,
Yeah.
right? Like Mario did it
Right.
more probably actually now that
Yeah.
I think about it, right? Like sure it
Beastie
had
Boys.
yeah, it had all of these licensed songs, and they were fun
Yeah.
sequences, right? Like I actually think a lot of them were really good. So I just think it's
Yeah.
like yeah I
Thunderstruck.
yeah. Anyways, sorry. I
No,
I
you're
had
fine.
that thought. I had that thought across my brain, and I was like, I need to say something about this. Darn it.
Well, that's what I was like most curious to really talk about was actually the music, which is kind of funny.
Oh hey.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for the film,
Yeah.
but I know we'll probably have a lot of thoughts
Yeah.
on it. Um, but do you have any final thoughts on it?
So, not anything that I want you to hear.
Okay.
Um, I will say, I have heard. I do have a question for you that I will also
Hmm.
answer. I have been hearing pretty, not like anything specific, but just that like the post credit scene is apparently like kind of big. Uh,
That's what I keep hearing, but I don't know what it is or.
do you have like a do you have like a uh even just something like out there, right? Like something crazy. Like what would you want it to be?
That's that's really tough. Um, okay, what I want it to be, I could see. Okay, so what I think will be versus what I want it to be is two very different things.
Okay.
What I think it'll be is I actually think it'll be Metal Sonic.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense.
What I want it to be, and this might be a unpopular um or not on a lot of people's radar type of end credit scene. What I think it would be is I think they introduced Doom.
Oh, you want a Black Arm
Yeah,
storyline.
yeah,
Okay.
and maybe leads into a spin-off.
Okay.
That that's what I would say, but I'd like that's what I would want,
Okay.
but I don't know if it's gonna happen.
So, in my mind, this really is just like off the dome. I haven't like heard anything about anything. Um,
Hmm.
there are kind of like four possibilities. Uh, the first one is maybe not obvious, but like kind of like logical progression. Silver the Hedgehog, right? Like
Yeah, I was also thinking that too.
complete the Hedgehog trio. Um,
Hmm.
I actually don't think that's the most likely, but I think it's possible. Um, the next thing is the chaotics, right? You got SBO,
Hmm.
Vector, and Charmy. I was really hoping for them to be in the Knuckles show. That's not what we got at all. But I think those characters. Um, how do I put
I
this?
don't think I don't think anybody expected the Knuckles show to be like that.
Yeah, that's true. Um,
No disrespect to it, I actually enjoyed it, but also,
yeah,
yeah, I didn't expect that.
yeah. It wasn't like yeah. It's not what people wanted. I think is
Hmm.
the thing that show ran into. Um, but I just think the chaotics they're so fun and they fill out the world so nicely. I just think they would be fun. Um, uh, I think I want to echo Metal Sonic again. I think Metal Sonic.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly, until like some of the later trailers were like, okay, they're going in this direction. Um, I would have told you like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I think Metal Sonic is maybe the final boss of this movie, but I don't think that anymore. Um, I think the fourth and maybe the sleeper idea is they they say we're gonna because they skipped to Sonic Adventure 2, right? They didn't do Sonic
Mm-hmm.
Adventure. So I think they actually go backwards and adapt Sonic Adventure for the next movie. And so
Mm-hmm.
you do Chaos and you do like the Echidna tribe and all that stuff because
Mm-hmm.
that's all like stuff that has to do with Sonic and Knuckles
Right.
backstory, right? So like it's all um that's all stuff, that's all like untapped stuff basically. Whereas like Shadow is very entwined in like Eggman's history.
Mm-hmm.
Um and you know, you obviously have Gerald is in this movie and Maria and stuff. So I think it would be cool if they tried to do Chaos. Um but I mean
Mm-hmm.
really my biggest like desire really is just like more characters, right? Like I want Amy, I want the Chaotix, I want
Mm-hmm.
Rouge, I want, you know, uh I also think Blaze the cat would be awesome, right? I think that would just be so cool. Um cuz she's really like Sonic's equal opposite in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Um so, yeah. That's kind of my predictions. But if we get the Chaotix, I'll be happy. Um As long as it's not the Deadly Six. People keep memeing about it and it's funny, but I don't want it. Nobody likes the
That's
Deadly
funny.
Six.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah. I'm excited. Maybe you'll get like maybe in the next podcast you'll get like a brief like Ezra freaking out in the car on his way home kind of thing before the podcast actually starts. Um
Exactly.
so yeah, cuz I have kind of a long drive to and from. So
Yeah.
um yeah. Yeah, really looking forward to it.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. We shall see. I'm excited to talk more about it and see it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah.
But
Oh, by
yeah.
the way, I'm going to see it like a lot between
Yeah.
now and the next podcast.
Absolutely.
I'm going to see it. I mean, there's a really good chance I get home from the movie at like 11, uh get off of work, like go to work at like 9 in the morning the next day.
Mhm.
And then at 7 p.m. when I get off work, I go
Yeah.
see the movie again, right? Like there's a very real possibility of that. So like, yeah. Um yeah. Just wanted to say
Yeah.
that.
No. I know. No worries. Um but yeah, that kind of concludes um this episode. Um yeah, be look on the lookout on the future.
Indeed.
Um we'll be doing our year in review next episode, and then
Probably
you
after the
know
new year.
probably after the new year. Just because the way the calendar falls when we're recording this right now.
Yeah.
Plus we got Sonic tomorrow, so
Yeah.
and you'll probably see it a few more times. So um, yeah. So yeah, next episode will be year in a review. I have some fun ideas planned for it. Um,
Yes.
uh, I think I might reveal something next episode,
Ooh.
but I'll leave that. I'll leave it at that. Just teasing something.
Ooh.
Um, but yeah.
Wait, is it like a podcast thing or an IRL thing?
It is a podcasting.
Oh,
Yes.
cool.
Yep.
Ooh. Even I
So,
don't know what this could be.
yep. Yep. It'll be. I will leave you all at that. Um, but yeah. With that, I'm sorry I like that.